Okay, we're ready. Ben, wake up.
Oh, John.
All right, your Ben Joravsky show for Friday, April 5th is just moments away. But before we get going into the show here, we would like to thank the following unions for helping bring the Ben Joravsky show back. First off, the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 and District 8, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Thank you once again to those unions for jumping on board and helping bring the Ben Joravsky show back. And, of course, today's show is brought to you by our friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. With that said, your Ben Joravsky show starts now. Thank goodness it is Friday, April 5th, and live from the Chicago Reader's Sun-Times studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, it's another Rummana Rundown with Sun-Times Editor Rummana Hussain. We welcome political strategist Joanna Klonsky. And it's Roosevelt University professor and author, David Faris. And now your host, the man who loves playing air organ. You should see it, guys. Chicago Reader columnist, Ben Joravsky.
Hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this Yes Man Friday. And here's why.
Wait, yes man or yes ma'am?
M-A-N as in Nancy.
All right.
Yes Man Friday. And here's why. So, for the last few weeks, I've been so utterly obsessed with our mayoral election that I almost forgot about one Donald John Trump. You remember him, Dee's
If you have a windmill anywhere near your house, congratulations. Your house just went down 75% in value. And they say the noise causes cancer. You told me that one, okay?
That guy?
Oh, yeah, that guy. You know, our president. Our president, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, got a reminder, not just with that great clip that Dee loves to play, and I cannot hear enough. Our president, ladies and gentlemen, front page of the New York Times.
You see that, listeners? That is a newspaper.
All right. Trump favors pizza
Pizza? He favors pizza?
Pizza magnet for federal board. Yeah, Herman Cain. My worlds are coming together now, all right? He wants to nominate Herman Cain to the Federal Reserve Board, and this means, folks, I'm going to have to do a mini deep dive. All right, just a mini deep dive here, okay? So the Federal Reserve Board is a board of bankers and economists and other big shots nominated by the president, approved by the Senate, and they generally regulate the economy by controlling interest rates. The higher the interest rates, the more money it costs to borrow money, so it kind of slows the economy because it's going to cost you more money to buy a house or buy a car, et cetera, and so forth. The lower their interest rates, the more it speeds up the economy because money's cheaper, right? All right, it's basic. Generally, conservatives want the president to put the Federal Reserve Board to have higher interest rates to sort of control the economy a little bit. They say they do it for inflation, but I kind of think it's because they're all bankers, D, and they want more money. I'm just telling you what they say. Herman Cain is, this is important to remember this, is generally of an inflation hawk. And he's always advocated that you should have higher interest rates to control the inflation. Inflation hawk. Remember that anyway.
Yeah, but I bet his pizza parties are fantastic.
Donald John Trump, on the other hand, is now president of the United States, and he wants a go-go economy, a robust economy, so he could say, I'm the man, all right? Under me, there's been economic robust soaring everything. The world is good. Overlook the fact that we're about to have an ecological destruction and annihilation of the planet as we know it due to climate change. Just think about the roaring economy, okay? So he wants the Federal Reserve Board to keep those interest rates low, keep that economy going strong. Herman Cain, you would think, would be in favor of raising the interest rates because, remember, he said he's an inflation hawk. But, of course, Herman Cain is also a political animal. If you recall, Dr. D, he ran for president in 2012, and the Republican primary. Remember his campaign, 999? You remember that one, D?
Yeah.
999. That was going to call for steady tax rates of 9%. Talk about regressive taxation. Everybody's going to pay the same 9% tax rate on income taxes, on business taxes, and on national sales tax. 999. He really just made it so simple and easy to understand, very similar to Donald Trump. His campaign was eventually ended when all these stories emerged of sexual harassment charges, something else he seems to have in common with Donald John Trump on. Anyway, Donald Trump wants to put Herman Cain on the Federal Reserve Board. He wants to have a rubber stamper on the Federal Reserve Board. Now, you think this is funny? Why would he want an inflation hawk on the Federal Reserve Board if he wants the Federal Reserve Board to go in the opposite direction and lower interest rates? Well, D, the answer is this. With a new president, and Herman Cain's doing one of those famous political evolutions we hear so much about. You know about those evolutions? Remember Barack Obama had an evolution on gay marriage? First he was for it, then he was against it, then when he was about to leave office, he was for it again, all right?
I flop, then I flipped again.
And generally, a political evolution is when a politician puts his or her finger to the air and sees which way the wind is blowing and figures, I better evolve so I can, be with the crowd. In this case, Herman Cain is evolving because he wants to get on that board and win Donald Trump's approval. It kind of reminds me, D, follow me on this, of that great TV show from the 60s called Bewitched. Have you ever seen Bewitched?
Oh, yeah.
You've seen Bewitched? You were even born.
I mean, Nick at Night, they play the old stuff still.
All right, follow me, folks. In Bewitched, there was, the lady was a witch. What was her name?
Samantha.
Samantha was a witch, and she could make her nose go back and forth, and like cats would disappear and stuff like that. She was married to Darren, who was in the advertising business, and
Hang tight, millennials.
Darren's boss was Larry. Remember Larry?
No.
So you don't remember Larry?
I didn't watch it that much.
So here's where it all comes together, everybody. So Darren would be making a pitch for their new campaign to the client. And so he would say what the pitch was going to be. And Larry, the boss, would go, I don't like it. That's terrible. And then the client would say, I think it's pretty good. And immediately Larry would go, you know what? I think he's right. It's a great advertising pitch.
Yeah, Larry, come on.
Herman Cain is like Larry, all right? He's like, I'm going to fight inflation. Donald Trump says, I don't care. And Herman Cain's like, you know what, boss? That sounds good to me. So in other words, we have Larry's in the Senate, Larry's in the White House, and now Larry's on the Federal Reserve Board. I'm telling you, folks, we're becoming a country of Larrys. We got a great show today, everybody. Oh, yes, indeed. Rummana Hussain will be here for the Rummana Rundown, the weekly Rummana Rundown. It's one of the most popular features on this show. Rummana will be coming in about a half hour. She's got so much. I just got off the phone with her, D. She wants to talk so much about the election, Biden, all kinds of things on her mind. At 2 o'clock, Joanna Klonsky, political strategist, feeling pretty good. She was a strategist for the victorious Lori Lightfoot campaign, but she'll be in here. We haven't had a creep report update from Joanna Klonsky. This is from the old show. She would come on all the time to talk about men behaving badly in politics, etc. And so, of course, there's some Joe Biden talk. And
it'd be a good thing to not have a creep report if there's no creeps to report. But unfortunately, there is.
That is a very good point. At 2:30, the man, the myth, the legend, David Faris. Now, folks, he is a professor of political science at Roosevelt University. He wrote the book, It's Time to Fight Dirty, How Democrats Can Build a Lasting Majority in American Politics. And one of our listeners, Bab, correct?
Yep.
All right, Bab, I hope you're listening out there right now, or if you're listening on the download later today, whatever. He said, Ben, you should have David Faris on the show because David Faris will set you right on Nancy Pelosi because Nancy Pelosi has to fight harder and tougher. And I've been feeling the Nancy Pelosi vibe lately.
Yes, you have.
So maybe David Faris will let me see the light on how Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats in Washington should respond to one Donald John Trump. What's the best strategy heading into 2020? Who's the best candidate? What are the best themes to articulate, etc.? Should we continue with impeachment talk? All this and more from David Faris, who's not afraid to roll up his sleeves and fight dirty. So we got a lot of political talk ahead of us. Politics, local politics, national politics, all kinds of politics. Before we do that, oh yeah, before we do any of that, the doctor's got the news.
I talk about politics too.
Yeah, we have politics with the doctor.
Oh, by the way, dude, you keep dropping your Nancy Pelosi button. There, goodness. All right. He loves Nancy Pelosi, guys.
By the way, this button.
Nancy Pelosi.
We need more buttons. We only have Bernie buttons. Nothing. I love Bernie to death, but it's like only visitors to this show have been Bernie people. So if you like if somebody is out there likes Buttigieg, bring a Buttigieg button. All right. How about that? Who is the fella that we now? Oh, here you go. Let's see how good your short-term memory is. All those years of reefer catching up to you.
I know.
Who is the congressman who announced his presidential candidacy yesterday? We talked about him.
Oh, Swalwell.
That's
Eric
close.
Swalwell.
We'll give you that, Eric Swalwell.
Swalwell, there we go.
From California. And what's the issue he's running on?
Gun control.
Very good. Young D, give that man a button.
Okay, yeah, you keep that Pelosi button. He loves Nancy Pelosi, guys. All right, it's the middle of the final day of the week. Let's talk about the national news happening this afternoon. And holy crap, there's a lot of it. First up, 20 states have filed a motion to block Donald Trump's diversion of federal money for a border wall.
Good.
Anything else you'd like to say about that?
I say yes. I really want to ask David Faris. I'm writing this down to ask David Faris. David Faris.
Oh, great content here.
Fight the border wall. All right, because no, this is basically there's two issues here. One, it's a complete and total utter waste of money to spend the money building the wall. It won't do anything on the issue of immigration. Everybody knows that. It's just this pretense that Donald Trump is playing. Two, it sends out a bad vibration, if you will, in terms of race relations and ethnic relations, basically playing to Trump's campaign to make Hispanic people or Latino people evil enemies that we should fear. And three, there's just the whole notion of just in general resisting Donald Trump. What's the best way to resist Donald Trump? So I'm going to see what David Faris has to say about this issue.
All right, next, White House Correspondents' Dinners. You know them. You love them. Yeah, but Donald Trump doesn't. The president is keeping the trend alive and once again will not attend the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Yeah, instead he's going to hold a rival rally the night of the event. Here's the quote from Trump, quote,
"The dinner is so boring and so negative that we're going to hold a very positive rally."
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the White House Correspondent Dinner. I'll be honest with you folks. First of all, I'm just like the whole notion of journalists getting all dressed up and going to I don't know. I'm not cut from that kind of cloth.
So you'll be at the rally.
Well, I'm not a big fan of Donald Trump rallies either.
Okay.
When is that? When is the meeting?
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I think it's in April. I want to say. So I'll probably be watching a basketball game or something like that and trying to avoid the whole thing. But I must say this: Michelle Wolf was hilarious. What was it, 2 years ago that she was the?
That was the last year, I believe.
No, I want to say it was 2017, and she made fun of Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Oh, yeah.
And so there was a fallout, and they went with somebody in 2018 who was a little more tame. That's my memory. My memory could be wrong. I know Frank is out there right now.
Frank, get on it,
Come on,
buddy.
man. But I thought Michelle Wolf was funny for 10 trivia points.
Oh, God. A second trivia point.
Yeah, here we go. And for this Bernie button with the reefer, Bernie Reefer.
It's my button, but go ahead.
Who was hilarious in the 90s at this roasting Bill Clinton?
Oh, I mean, there's the Norm Macdonald.
There you go. By the way, folks, a little secret about Dr. D. He loves Norm Macdonald.
Yeah, hey, guys, send your hate mail my way. All right, now when it comes to the Democrats' recent demand of our president's tax returns, Donnie's playing the audit card again. Donald Trump continues to say he's under audit and can't release his taxes.
All right, hold on. I'm writing this down to talk about with David Faris. Tax returns. Should Dems press
All right.
issue.
What is this, Ben writing segment?
Okay, I say yes, press him on the issue because Donald Trump is so full of it. That explanation, I can't return them because I'm under audit. The IRS came out with a statement basically saying, yeah, it doesn't matter if you're under audit. You can still return them. Nope, can't do it. You know, it's like he said that the Mueller report exonerated me. Nope, didn't say that. He's going to say it anyway. So, by the way, did you see that Bernie Sanders is vowing to reveal his income tax statements? Did you know that? Disclose his income tax?
Really?
Yeah, for 10 trivia points. Another
Jesus.
10 trivia points. Here you go. For this button.
I think you have a crutch. It's the trivia point thing. Go ahead.
What show did Bernie Sanders promise to reveal?
Daily Show, Trevor Noah. All right, now let's move on. On to those looking to kick this babbling psycho out of office.
If you have a windmill anywhere near your house, congratulations. Your house just went down 75% in value. And they say the noise causes cancer. You tell me that one, okay?
Yes, we have quite a few 2020 Democratic POTUS candidate updates here. First off, Massachusetts Senator, the Eliminator, Elizabeth Warren, has added another time to take out the trash idea to her platform. So far, we have heard break up the tech giants like Amazon and Zuckerberg and get rid of the Electoral College. Well, the Eliminator strikes again, and God bless her, as Elizabeth Warren proposes completely eliminating the filibuster.
Yeah, I'm like a flag blowing in the breeze on the filibuster thing. By the way, Elizabeth Warren, it was break up Facebook, not Zuckerberg. Poor Zuckerberg, break him up. But in terms of the filibuster, all right, I'm writing it down. Talk to Faris about
Can we talk to the people now about that?
Hold on, I'm writing it down. I like the old filibuster, when you had to get up and give a speech forever and ever. One person, remember Mr. Smith Goes to Washington or Congress, whatever the name of the movie was? Frank, what's the name of the movie, the exact name of the movie?
Oh, by the way, he weighed in. Michelle Wolf was last year.
Oh, I sit corrected. Anyway, I thought it was 2017. What do I know? So the old filibuster where somebody actually had to work. Now they get this new watered down, diluted. It's like everything else, D. Everything's getting watered down. Harumph. And this watered down filibuster where you could just sort of like announce that you're going to filibuster a bill. So you just automatically have to get to 60 votes to end it. I think if you're going to have a filibuster, you got to do a real filibuster, all right? Get up on there and talk for like 50 hours and, earn your obnoxiousness. So I'm up mixed feeling. I feel if a senator wants to talk for 50 hours, more power to him or her.
Elizabeth Warren also added universal child care to her presidential platform.
Here.
And finally, Grandpa Joe, former Vice President Joe Biden, will he run or won't he? Yeah. All this week we have noticed Biden attempting to get in front of the recent uncomfortable touching allegations against him. Mm-hmm. And I guess his strategy here is to joke about it. During an appearance today at an IBEW union event, he came out on stage and hugged IBEW President Lonnie Stevenson, who is a male, by the way. I have the audio from Biden after the hug. Here's Joe Biden.
I just want you to know I had permission to hug Lonnie. Anyway.
Then after that, a few kids were brought onto stage. Biden touched the kids, just, like their shoulder. And then, he's at it again.
By the way, he gave me permission to touch him.
Catch Joe Biden at Zany's. Ben is joking. I'll ask you, Ben, is joking about this an obvious sign he is not taking these allegations seriously? And is it just me, or is it kind of awkward?
It is awkward, and I think it's his attempt to put it behind him, if you will. By the way, I'm writing this down for Joanna and David Faris. Joe Biden hugging. Got it. All right. I'm writing it down for you.
Yeah, we get it.
Several hats on the Ben Joravsky show. Several hats. I think this is his attempt to do what Donald Trump does and make fun of legitimate criticism against him. And by making fun of it, maybe he can distance himself from it and sort of trivialize it and de-weaponize it. Is that a word? I don't know. So I think it's clearly his attempt. By the way, he hasn't even officially announced he's running for president. So while he's doing this, I'm sure he's got all his pollsters seeing what the impact is. That's really what's going on, D. He's testing all these different strategies to see how they play. And if it seems as though he has weathered the storm and that Democrats don't care about his odd behavior, then he will proceed and run for president. If it turns out that they do care, you watch. He'll suddenly go, I've thought about it, and I've come to the conclusion that I need more time with my family. You watch that one. It'll be coming up real soon.
And a new poll finds that most voters say uncomfortable touching allegations against former Vice President Joe Biden should not disqualify him from being president. In the Hill/Harris X poll, 56% said Biden's conduct, his conduct should not be viewed as disqualifying, while 23% said it should be. And my favorite here, 21% said, I don't know, unsure.
That's like the 21% in the mayoral election. Remember that one? Hey, I didn't even know that was coming. Am I a genius or what? Because that's why he's making jokes, folks. He did the polls. He showed that the overwhelming majority of Democratic voters don't care about it, so he figures, I'll make jokes about it. Now he'll poll the jokes, all right? He'll say, do people like your jokes? And they'll do like, what are those little, they put everybody in a room, whatever they call those things again, where they...
it's like a test room.
Test room, whatever. No, Frank, what do they call it? And they'll survey, voters to see if they think it's funny, if they think it's too serious for humor, that kind of thing. So let's face it, it's all a poll-tested business running for office.
Now, of course, we will keep you posted on these stories as today's program rolls along. Enough of the national news. Benny J, please tell me that you're ready to find out what is going on in Chicago and or Illinois.
Yeah, I will tell you this.
What?
It's what I told you yesterday. It's what I told you the day before. And it's what I told you the day before that. I was born ready.
Excellent, because coming up after these short words from our host, Ben Joravsky, we will find out what else is news. I got it. Don't worry about it.
Okay. I cannot wait. It's that time of day when the doctor plucks that little trick out of his little sleeve. Let's see what it is when we return. At Chicagoland Cremation Options, we are committed to listening, educating, and guiding your family through the cremation process. Whether it is time of death or when planning your wishes for the future, Chicagoland Cremation Options can accommodate you at an affordable price and with great dignity. Avoid funeral home costs with direct access to a crematory for a cremation. Chicagoland Cremation Options, just south of O'Hare, 5 minutes west of Chicago. It's a family-owned business and operated by my good friend, Douglas Klein. Visit it at ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. One more time, ChicagolandCremationOptions.com.
Hey, and we're back, everybody. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Whoa, what was that? There we go. Come on, smoother transitions, fellas.
Fellas, it's just me, dude.
Our crack team. You know how it is, like at the end of other shows, I'll just say that, they read off all the people, and our ex-executive producer, Billy Bob, our recorder, Billy Joe, our, lunch runner, Sammy Sue. They got this whole list. I got one guy.
Hey, guys.
Several hats.
Several hats here on the Ben Joravsky
I'm just going to start making up people, all right? Our what is that thing there? That big old thing over there?
I don't know. What are you talking about?
The soundboard. Our soundboard control engineer, Brian Joe.
Okay, we're about to find out what's going on locally. It's time for What Else is News. Landslide Lori is getting her mayoral transition team in order.
Transition team.
We're going to find out who's in it and unpack it all in moments. But first, some state news. We have an update on
Pritzker.
We have an update on our friends of the conservative persuasion's favorite thing to rip Governor J.B. Pritzker about. And it's not his love for horses. No, it is not. They actually think horses are pretty awesome. Who doesn't love horses? No, it's his graduated income tax plan. Seriously, Ben, there is so much right-wing trolling on Pritzker about this. Guys, trust me, listening, all right? I'm from downstate. I see people back home posting this mostly hot garbage all the time. I say mostly because every now and again something funny will occasionally get in there. But just one look at the weirdos over at the Illinois Policy Institute's Facebook page and their cover photo of J.B. Pritzker and a magical unicorn and cartoons like a fox trying to raid a hen house would prove it. But our Illinois Democrats are rumored to be in a disagreement over JB's first installment of the graduated income tax plan to pass through legislation, a plan proposing a tax cut for every income bracket below $250,000 a year in some cases. Yeah, apparently they are concerned with what the rate should be. State Representative Kathleen Willis, a member of the House Democratic leadership team, said there was some concern that trumpeting such a small amount as a tax cut could be perceived as, quote, almost insulting by some constituents. But Pritzker says, do not believe the hype. Oh, no. He's confident the legislature will approve a graduated income tax.
I wouldn't believe everything you read, but I would say we're doing quite well in terms of support.
Also, JB was in... Oh, no, go ahead there. What do you think about that?
I wouldn't believe everything you read. Once again, everybody's making fun of the media. We've talked so much about this. We're going to be talking about this in the coming weeks as well, folks. The graduated income tax, everybody knows, or JB calls it a fair tax. I'm sure that was a concept that they came up with after polling. Somehow or other that would work better with the voters. But the basic point is this. The more money you make, the higher the rate of taxation should be, because you have the money, you have the wherewithal to make a greater contribution. The less money you make, if you're in the Ben and Dennis side of the swimming pool, the lower your rate should be, because a 5% chunk of your salary means a lot more to you than it does if you have $1 billion a year. It makes a lot of sense. Year after year, voters say they favor it in polls. They favor it in state referendum, etc. But when you start to implement it, that's when the dirty dealing starts up. And I talked about this all week in regards to the 47th Ward aldermanic race, where a Democrat, Negron, was using the Rauner-style rhetoric against his opponent, Matt Martin. And so the Democrats are buying into this Republican rhetoric that any tax hike, even if it's on the wealthiest, is somehow or other a tax on us all. And so it's a very difficult campaign to fight for if you're for a progressive tax, and it's very difficult to fight the rhetoric against it. It's easy to demagogue this issue, so it's going to be very tricky. Kathleen Willis was absolutely correct. It's going to be very tricky. You have to do the tax in such a way. Governor Quinn was just talking about this the other day in this very studio. You have to link it to a cut in the property tax. You have to make it clear to voters that a higher tax on the wealthy will be offset by a lower tax on you. And that's the challenge that Pritzker has to come up with. So it's a delicate little game of negotiations here that'll be happening. Again, they'll be testing this with polls. They'll be testing this out on the talk shows, see what sales, what's popular, before they have that showdown vote, probably in a couple months or so. Well, no, next month in May. It'll probably be in May.
Also, JB was in Chicago last night. He and Mayor Rahm Emanuel, along with their wives, attended a dinner in the Gold Coast. Oh, Ben, I know you love the Gold Coast. You were down there rubbing elbows with everyone. Did you happen to run into Pritzker and Rahm last night?
I did not.
Really?
So, where was I last night? I can't remember.
Man.
Yeah.
Not at the Gold Coast,
I was not at the Gold Coast. I was definitely not with Pritzker and Rahm.
Out of his regular schedule there, folks. All right, we're now into day three since former prosecutor and former Chicago Police Board, but current mayor-elect Lori Lightfoot has won the election. And there's no time to waste here, people. Yeah, we got to get a plan together to clean up the mess the last mayor made. Lightfoot has indeed hit the ground running, and she has announced her first batch of mayoral transition committee members, Ben.
Oh, okay. Transition team politics.
And if this goes anything like our governor's transition, there's about 2,000 more people to come here. Good Lord. He had a lot of them. But let's get to know who's in so far. People, it is time to get to know the Lori Lightfoot transition team. All righty, first up, it's senior advisor Sarah Pang. Pang has co-chaired Mayor Rahm Emanuel's 2011 transition. She worked as Senator Alan Dixon's staff for almost 10 years and was the first deputy chief of staff for Richard M. Daley for 9 years. She also spent a decade in CNA's global communications operation. Ben Joravsky, what do you know about Sarah Pang, and what do you think about this?
Well, Sarah Pang is what I would call a classic Dem. And so you have to understand the politics of transition teams, folks. A transition team serves two purposes. One is, well, there's the notion that you put people on who know something about operating government itself, operating city government in this case. So it sort of helps the incoming mayor deal with just the practicalities of day-to-day. But the larger, more important purpose, I think, is a symbolic public relations one. I guess this is a cynic in me speaking. Rummana Hussain has come into the room. I don't know if who's more cynical about politics, me or Rummana Hussain.
I bet it's you.
I don't know about that, but it's like an attempt. So it's this public relations attempt, And when an incoming mayor wants to sort of assure all these different constituencies in the city of Chicago that he or she, in this case she, is looking out for them. So when you put somebody like Sarah Pang on, as you've heard, whose background is with the Daley administration, with Alan Dixon, conventional Dems, it's sort of sending a signal that we're responsible, we're not revolutionaries, we're not radicals, we know how to make the trains run on time. So rest assured, sort of corporate Chicago, mainstream Chicago. That is sort of the message that a mayor sends out with a nominee like that.
Up next, it's Lori Lightfoot's chief of staff, Maurice Klassen. Yeah. Having, let's see here, and comes to an assignment having run strategy for the Chicago Police Department. His focus has been to improve community policing, increase training, and utilize data analytics. He also was charged with enforcing reform mandates under the consent decree. Klassen, a former Seattle prosecutor, was a program officer on criminal justice issues at MacArthur Foundation.
Yeah, once again, sending out a message, in this case, that Lori Lightfoot is serious about police reform, but you don't take someone who's too radical. You don't put Jamal Green on there, for instance. Hey, Jamal. And you put somebody who's like a mainstream reformer on there. It's just to not alienate the police department too much, but sort of send a message that you take serious the mandate, and I think it was a mandate that emerged from the fallout over Qua McDonald, that we have to clean up our police department in regards to its relationship with the black community in the city of Chicago. So it's sort of like a reassuring message that she hasn't forgotten that.
On to our next Lori Lightfoot mayoral transition member. He is the Intergovernmental Affairs Advisor, Manuel Perez. He most recently was Lightfoot's campaign manager, and before that ran Congressman Jesus Chuy Garcia's campaign for Congress. Perez previously served as chief of staff to the county clerk, which has over 200 employees, and as chief of staff to then Commissioner Garcia.
Yeah, twofold in this one. Number one, it's a political person, so knows how all this thing plays out politically. Number two, obviously, Latino, ties to Chuy, assuring the Latino population of the city of Chicago that I, Lori Lightfoot, have not forgotten you. Right? Political dynamics going on here, folks. As Lori Lightfoot is, she just got 75% of the vote, to quote you. She wants to keep that 75% of the vote.
All right, up next, Lisa Schneider-Fabes. Our next transition member, she will be, or is, transition manager. She's been a business and government consultant and has worked with Chicago Police Accountability Task Force. She previously worked for the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, helping local governments and HUD clients comply with public housing regulations and environmental laws. She also had a stint leading projects for Chicago Public Schools.
Yeah, I think I know her. I think I've run into her over the years. I can't remember half the people I've met over the years, Dr. D. The housing issue, very important there. Once again, trying to send a message out to the larger community that I'm not completely overlooking housing, although if she's like the last two mayors we have, affordable housing will be overlooked very quickly in her administration. And again, someone with experience in government, a classic Dem type. So once again, sort of just assuring, just sending out this assurance that we're going to have responsible people who know politics, who know how government works, in charge. We're not going to have rabble-rousers like Ben and Rummana running things.
All right, we got one more transition member to announce, but first, shout out to our friend Scott on the live stream. He's listening this afternoon. He has a question for you here, Ben. I know you know the answer here. Scott asks, is First Tuesdays terminated, or is it seeking a new venue?
No.
Hard to tell from its website.
Oh, yeah, we got to work on that website. Good. My partner in crime at First Tuesday, the great Mick Dumke, may be the only guy in the city of Chicago as bad at promotion as I am. And come on, Mick, it's true out there. It's sort of an inside joke. So, yeah, we have to work on that website. Scott, thank you very much. I'm going to have our team of crack, computer techies working on it as of tomorrow. But no, First Tuesday will be back on May 7th. I talked about that with Mick yesterday. We just don't know who our guest is. Typical Mick and Ben.
But it will be back, all right?
Yes. We took April 2nd off because it literally was an election day. We both had things to do.
Not sure who the guest is, but damn, those two are entertaining, all right? So just go check it out.
Yeah.
On to our final Lori Lightfoot transition member. And this member needs no introduction here on the Ben Joravsky Show. He was actually a guest on our program not long ago. He's former Illinois gubernatorial candidate Chris Kennedy's lieutenant pick, Mr. Rod Joy.
Yes. Okay, remember I said you want to send out reassurances to various constituencies? Rod Joy is like a reassurance to the Ben constituency. He's a committed progressive. He's a really good guy. I love Rod Joy. And so, he has some deep values. He's very much concerned about the issue of crime and relationship between the black community and the police, and economic development. He was Chris Kennedy's lieutenant governor, and Chris Kennedy was the one who opined, and I got a feeling that Ross sort of gently pushed him in this direction, that the planning strategies under Mayor Rahm and Mayor Daley, well, I added the Mayor Daley part, were intended to force poor people out of the city of Chicago through gentrification. So when you put a Rod Joy on there, you're sort of sending a message to people like me that we haven't forgotten you completely. And it was funny when Rahm did his transition team, he didn't put anybody remotely resembling me on the transition team. So it was Rahm's way of saying,
oh, he just flipped the bird, guys.
Two of them.
2 hands. Oh, my.
It was just Rahm's way of letting the lefties like me know how little he cared about us. But Rod Joy is a good guy, and so, I think he could be the conscience of this transition team.
You can call it a conventuency.
What did you just say?
A conventuency?
I do not know what you're talking about.
All right, that went over your head there. All right, but hey, just like that, you're now in the know of what's going on in Chicago and Illinois. We had some state news in there, and now you will have an answer the next time someone asks you, hey, what else is news?
All right.
Whoa.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you something. All right?
Okay.
I'm going to tell you something that Larry from The Bewitched Show, Larry Joe Bird, one of the greatest basketball players of all time.
All right.
And Larry Wolf, a kid I went to high school with.
Hey, Larry.
They all agree you did a great job. Give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. We got Rummana Hussain sitting here ready to do the Rummana Rundown. Cannot wait. We'll be right back after this.
Hey there, producer Dennis here. Thanks for finding and listening to the brand new Ben Joravsky Show. All right, so here's how this works. The Ben Joravsky Show live streams on the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel Tuesday through Friday, 1 until 3 p.m. Once the show is over, you can listen to the replay on our YouTube channel, or we throw it online for you to download by 4 p.m. Where can you download the Ben Joravsky Show, you may be asking yourself? Well, you may be asking yourself a fantastic question. You can find previous Ben Joravsky shows and guest interviews through several outlets. The Chicago Sun-Times Online, chicago.suntimes.com, the Chicago Reader Online, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, pick one. Just search for The Ben Joravsky Show. J-O-R-A, V as in victory, S-K-Y. So, let's recap. Tuesday through Friday, 1 until 3 p.m. Live streamed on the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel and downloadable by 4 at chicago.suntimes.com, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcast. Yes, the Ben Joravsky Show is back. We're live and downloaded. Tell your friends and enjoy the rest of the show.
Commercial break over. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show.
Yes, indeed. Commercial break is over. It's time to get down to business. Rummana Hussain is in the studio. She, of course, editor here at the Chicago Sun-Times. Chicago Sun-Times, one of our sponsors, along with the Reader, and we are rooted. Our studio is right here in the Chicago Sun-Times building. So anyway, Rummana Hussain comes on every Friday.
The coffee's excellent here at the Sun-Times, by the way.
They know how to make coffee at the Bright One. And we call it the Rummana Rundown. So, Rummana, welcome back. Welcome. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you, too.
And before we dive into all the issues of the week, I'll ask you the question. Are you more cynical than me? Are we tied? What do you think?
I don't know. I think we might be tied because, I don't know. I politically, I just find that there's not that many people I'm super enamored with. I think you're more enamored with people than I am.
Yes, I think.
So, I don't know.
I know. I do like people. Yes,
I like people. I don't know if I like politicians. I I don't get enamored that quickly with a lot of politicians because I think a lot of times they say things and they're totally off message.
Well,
like, people are always saying that they're so progressive and they really aren't when you kind of scratch the surface.
When you see we were just running through the transition members, the members that Lori Lightfoot put on her transition team, and what I was saying is that this is largely sort of like a staged thing, political demonstration to show different constituencies in the city of Chicago.
Yeah.
That she's looking out for their interests. That I'm not sure how much attention she's going to pay to whatever the transition team comes up with. There could be a whole new set of realities next week that dictates how she behaves.
Yeah.
But at the moment, it's important to show various constituency.
Of course. Yeah, and I don't falter for that. I mean, most people do that. I'm just saying I'm just cynical. I think I just think whenever there's like somebody that everybody's excited about politically, I'm like, I'm not that excited about them. They're not that interesting.
Wow.
They're not that charismatic. People find certain people charismatic, and I don't find them charismatic.
Wait,
at all.
time out. In 2008, you weren't.
I'm not gonna. I
Barack
won't
Obama.
Say, I won't say that I wasn't impressed with Barack Obama. I was pretty much, especially because his middle name was the same as my last name. I was pretty excited.
Yes, he didn't really make a big deal about that fact.
Well,
did
he had to downplay that.
He had to
downplay.
But I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. That he was sworn in, didn't
he? Did he said his name? He said
his
Barack
full
Hussain Obama.
Yeah,
and Hussain is actually my dad's middle name too. When he came to the United States, he technically didn't have a last name because people in India, their names are totally different. I mean, people have more last names. I hear more last names than I did. I guess that they did back in the olden days. So he just took his middle name and made it our last name.
Wait, did he have a last name?
No, his first name was Akhtar and his middle name was Hussain. I don't think he had a last name. Like, it wasn't like the family name. So when he came to the United States, he just added that as his middle name. I mean, as his last name.
As his last name. And that's how you became Hussain.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I did not know that, so I learned something new today. All right. Let's talk about the mayoral election. 75% vote for Lori Lightfoot. 75%. I think that's the highest since we talked about this yesterday, since Daley in 2003, something like that. So the question I ask everybody, does she have a mandate? And if she has a mandate, what is she supposed to do? What is that mandate?
I think you mean a mandate, like what she's going to do? Like,
yeah, like some people are asking for something like specific.
Yeah. I don't know. Does she she hasn't said anything. She actually was here today for the Fran show. And I think she just is going to come in and have a couple mandates. I don't know, like maybe, quote unquote, fix the city. I don't know if she has a mandate necessarily. Yeah. I think she just wants to come in and be seen as different than the status quo. That's what I think. Maybe that's what her mandate's going to be. Like, things are going to operate differently. That's the way she's going to probably pose her first few days. That's what I think. But I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I could be completely wrong.
I guess I don't know if anyone ever has a mandate.
No, that's what I was going to say. I don't remember Rahm Emanuel having a mandate.
Well, he claimed he had a mandate.
What was that?
Rahm Emanuel's claimed that his mandate, well, it depends on which front you were talking about. For instance, in the schools, his mandate was to create more charters, undercut the power of the teachers union by making the teachers have to work more hours and be more susceptible to being fired by the whims of the principal or the board. Have a more centralized board. He claimed that he had a mandate to do that within a year. The teachers are on strike.
Yeah, I guess Lori Lightfoot has had several mandates, or at least spoke about like how things are going to run in the city council, how she'd like, a school, an elected school board. Mm-hmm. Maybe that, she'll kind of focus on education, just like a lot of our former mayors have. I think that may be something that she's going to be looking into, because I think that's always one of the most important topics that each mayor has tackled.
Well, unless I'm being too cynical here, Rummana, I feel that politicians claim they have a mandate when they don't really have a mandate.
No,
so for instance,
that's what I'm saying. I don't know if she has one.
Right. But 75% of the people, like Donald Trump, didn't even get a majority of the voters. But
his mandate was making America great again. And
whatever that means.
America first, right? So I think people did see that as a mandate,
But it's hard to claim you have a mandate to make America great again, even though we don't even know exactly what make America great again means when you didn't get more You didn't get most of the votes. How can you claim you have a mandate when you got less than 50% of the votes?
True. I don't know. I think he said, and, a lot of people saw that as different ways, I don't know, make America white again. That's what a lot of people saw it as. I think a lot of people in this quote unquote base did see it as that, make America great again, like make it like the 1950s again.
Yeah. And so he claimed he had a mandate when in fact he didn't have a mandate. It seems like Lori Lightfoot is not claiming she has a mandate, even though you would think 75% of the vote, she's got a mandate. Yeah. But the problem is, I guess, when politicians, particularly in the city of Chicago, they run for office, they don't stipulate exactly what they're going to do. So it's hard.
They do in like little bits and pieces. They said, she'll say, a lot of these, obviously with this mayoral race, everybody was basically talking about how they're not going to be like Rahm. So they talked about different things that he did and things they disagreed with. So they do tell you like little bits and pieces. Now, will they actually carry through, or will Lori Lightfoot actually carry through with what she said she's going to do? I mean, it's not going to be that cut and dry.
Yeah. Don't be like Rahm. That's what I was telling Mick Dumke yesterday. That was my advice. Don't be like Rahm. But that's less about policies, et cetera, I think.
Yeah, it's true.
Than just behavior and how do you act. All right, the voter turnout was abysmal.
I'm perplexed because when I turned 18, the first thing my dad said was go register and vote. And I've been voting ever since then. So I just find it amazing that people don't vote, because it was something that was ingrained in my head since I was a little kid. It was something my dad pushed us to do, and I just voted for I don't think I've ever not voted. So it's a very I don't know, just personally, I just find it interesting that people don't vote. I mean, when we went to go vote in our precinct, they told us, I asked them, I asked the people over there was basically no line. I wanted to do electronic balloting, but there's this, every time I go, there's only one machine and there's somebody who doesn't know how it works. And I was like, I want to do the electronic, but,
Why?
It's I don't know, because it's so quick. It's
you like to push
I don't want to use a pen. I just whatever, that's easy. But so there's no line except that one guy who's taking forever to vote for two people.
I know. He's yeah.
But I asked the woman, one of the volunteers, how it was in the morning, and she's like, it was so dead. And we went in around 12:30, 12:45, and they told us we're the 32nd and 33rd people in our precinct to vote, which is, I don't know. I kind of feel like people in Rogers Park are somewhat politically active, and it's just kind of perplexing to me. Yeah. And I know like this younger generation, I've seen a lot of people tweet about how we shouldn't shame people who don't vote. And I find that interesting. Maybe I'm just too old.
Let's talk about that.
And I'm like, why not? And they said, look at the choices they have. And I agree. Like I said, I'm cynical. I don't think some politician's going to come and they say they're going to be different than their predecessor. I don't think things are necessarily going to change. But don't you want to at least vote for, even if there are two people you hate, the lesser of two evils? I don't know. I just find it very interesting that people don't vote.
Well, the whole concept of shaming the generational divide here, and I get this a lot from Maya, who's on this show every Tuesday. She's of the younger persuasion from me. And
me too. I'm Generation X.
Yeah, your generation. She's a millennial. She's a millennial. And I've heard, she's not the only person that tells me this. Always stop shaming us. Stop shaming us. And somehow or other, it's like my fault. People don't vote. It's your fault. What did I do? But so what's your general attitude about millennials who say stop shaming us?
I don't agree with that. I know I try to keep my opinions out of this, but I'm not saying I'm going to go sit there and start berating people I don't know who didn't vote, but I have shamed some of my friends who said they didn't vote.
Yeah.
I remember in the 2008 presidential election, a friend of mine who's become very politically active since was telling me how she didn't vote. And I'm like, how could you not vote? I don't know. I shame my friends who don't vote. I'm not going to go around and shaming other people who don't vote, who I don't know. I just find it very odd. And I think you don't want to shame a lot of people on a lot of things, but if there's going to be one thing that I was going to shame people over, I think voting is one of the things. Because there's so many countries. I mean, my parents are immigrants from India, And, you know, and people talk about not having time, and people vote there. It's the world's largest democracy. And I'm not saying voter turnout's like crazy, but, you know, in a lot of countries, and I've been to a lot of countries, people don't have that right. And, you know, it's like, it's just a privilege to vote. I don't know, just, I know that a lot of people say that you shouldn't vote, shame, and especially the younger generation. I remember the Tribune did an article a day after the primaries, and some college students were saying, well, I had class.
Yeah,
or,
I saw that. Yeah.
Or it was cold. It wasn't cold this time. You know, it was pretty nice and sunny. And I voted when I was in college. Just wake up earlier, go after class. And I just thought that was interesting. Well, I don't know. I'm probably going to get shamed for saying that.
Well, here's the deal about shame. I'm going to tell you this right now, Rummana. There's a little bit of inconsistency among my millennialistic friends. Whenever I try to shame them, they go, shame on you for trying to shame us.
Yeah.
But my millennialistic friends are always trying to shame me into doing something. And the most obvious example was in the last mayoral campaign. The Tony Preckwinkle people ran commercials, or people supported Tony Preckwinkle ran commercials trying to shame us all into voting for Tony Preckwinkle by saying that if Lori Lightfoot were elected mayor of the city of Chicago, the police would just start killing people. I mean, talk about blatantly trying to shame you into doing something. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, shame on you for saying I can't shame you, but you can shame me.
Yeah, I've seen that too. I mean, I think it's okay to have a healthy debate. But, you know, when you say then when people bring up words like shame, then you're like, feel bad. You're like, oh, no, I'm going to make them, you know, cry. I don't want to make anybody cry or feel bad. But I have no problem shaming my friends who don't vote.
Well, here's or
shaming people who don't vote.
I will now try to articulate the defense of people who say don't shame, and that is this. It's not the fault of voters who don't vote that they don't vote, if you follow that. It's that they're expressing their opposition, their alienation to the system as it is, which is hostile to them, does not serve their interests. There's no compelling reason, like in this case, to vote for a Tony Preckwinkle or a Lori Lightfoot. So by not voting, you're actually sending a message that the system isn't working and you don't want to support it. Do you buy that at all?
I understand where people from that viewpoint are coming from, but at the same time, I'm just saying, as a citizen, I mean, someone who is a person of color and a woman, a lot of politicians don't serve my interest, you know. But I still think that, you know, you should go out and vote. That's just, I don't know, maybe it's just the way I was raised. All of us, when we turned 18, there's 4 kids in our family. My dad, as soon as we turned 18, just said, go register and vote. He said that within the first, second, or day that we turned 18.
Yeah.
So.
By the way, I want to tell everybody our 2 o'clock guest has entered the building. Joanna Klonsky has entered the building. I always love to say I love it when my guests come early. So Joanna Klonsky is in the building. And she, Rummana, is of the millennialistic persuasion. So maybe she could help us understand whether shaming is a concept that we should just throw away. But I also happen to know Joanna Klonsky's parents, and they taught her at an early age, you're going to go out and vote.
I think she votes.
Yeah, you're going to vote, girl.
That's like how my parents were, yeah.
All right. Now, this is something I've wanted to talk to you about for a long time. You mentioned this earlier about being Asian American. Maya Pawar was just running for treasurer, and he lost. He was, correct me if I'm wrong, the first Asian American alderman elected in the city of Chicago. I believe that I am correct when I say that.
Yeah. He
was elected in 2011 from the 47th Ward, and this was his first attempt. Well, he ran for governor briefly, and he dropped out of that race.
Yeah.
But this is his first attempt to seek higher office, and he lost to Melissa Conyers-Urban. Your thoughts in general, take it to the specific, but your thoughts in general about the place Asian Americans have in Chicago politics.
I don't think they really have a seat at the table because we've discussed this before. I think a lot of people just see the city as black and white and shades of brown, but not brown as in South Asian or not, you know, Asian. You never really hear people talking about the Asian vote. And to some extent, I understand that. Don't get me wrong. The city, you know, there aren't, you know, the Asian population isn't, you know, overflowing like it is like in other parts of the country, but we are there. And I think there is this notion that if you're Asian American, this is something that's been going on for years. You're this quote unquote model minority. And that's what the word to describe a lot of Asians was. So people kind of blend us into the overall white community. And to explain that, so like, I don't think people don't see us as the same as Hispanics or African American. We never get lumped into that group. We're kind of like separate. And a lot of people argue that, Asian Americans are successful and this and that, they're different. And I don't think that's necessarily true. There's so many different Asian groups in the city of Chicago. It's not that black and white when it comes to Asian Americans. And one of the things I try to tell people to explain, even at the Sun-Times, there was a job opening when I was working for Michael Sneed for a general reporter. And I was told that I couldn't apply to the job because it was for a minority. And I was like, hello. They told me. I'm not kidding. I was basically told I wasn't a minority. And by the way, the word minority is not preferred anymore by the AP. It's person of color. They say that you should try to not use that word minority.
What's your thoughts on that?
I think that's a good. They said unless it's in quotes, because there are still things that people talk about, like minority owned businesses. Mm-hmm. When the city talks about contracts for women and minority owned businesses. So people still use that term. Yeah. But the AP, I don't know if you saw, the AP had all these different rules, like no hyphen in the African American or Asian American.
Why?
So they were saying that the hyphen originally has, I believe, racist roots to kind of other those people. So the hyphen taking it out makes it less otherizing.
So it should just be two separate words, or not one word?
Yeah. So we were talking about that actually earlier the week during the elections.
So wait a minute. So, oh my God, okay, folks, this is really geeky journalistic talk. But when I first got started in the business, they gave me this AP that Rummana alluded to, Associated Press. It was a guidebook, which was so overwhelming to me because I'm dyslexic, and it's just I had to remember all these things. And one of the things they said, like when you're using, you got to put the hyphen in.
Yeah, now
it modifies.
It's taken out. We're actually talking about the newsroom, and I was saying that because the changes came out last week. If you follow Twitter, AP kind of went down all the different changes. And I was actually mentioning that to our editor. I go, we better decide what we're going to do because the mayor's election is coming up, and, the hyphen apparently is not used. And we tend to use do whatever AP does. So I'm just bringing that up. But yeah, I was told, back to her original thing, I was told pretty much that I wasn't a minority. So, but I'm still not part of the white boys club, or, I don't have white privilege. So that's one of the things I tell people. I go, I don't think, Asians get that benefit of the doubt of being a person of color or like in that position, and we're not really part of the larger group. So I think it's a pretty interesting place to be. Yeah. I think you're kind of in limbo. And a lot of times I think Asian Americans do feel like we're invisible and ignored, not really treated the same way as a lot of different other groups are, or given the visibility or treated.
Well, there is a generational attitude about this, and I'm going to show my age what I'm about to say. But here I go again. But 5 billion years ago, when I moved to Chicago, it was very much black-white. So, for instance, in terms of neighborhood demographics, when black people moved in, white people moved out. And the first thing I noticed about the difference that white people, their attitude about people of color in general, is that when Hispanics moved in or Latinos moved in, white people didn't move out. They didn't rush out. It wasn't like the panic. Yeah. So already I saw, that even broke through my mind that there's a difference in the white people's minds between a quote unquote black person and a quote unquote Latino person. And Asians, like, I don't know any white person would move out if an Asian moved in. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So it's like,
no, I know what
I'm just trying to explain white people to people. I know a lot about white people, having lived among them my whole life.
Oh, I know a lot about white people too. Trust me.
But do you understand the distinction?
No, trust me. I understand. I don't think being Indian is the same thing as being black at all. Like I don't even think being Indian is the same thing as being Latino. But at the same time, I'm just saying that it's in terms of discussion of, bringing up Asian Americans or just, the talk, we're just kind of non-existent. And it's different in England, because when you go to England, South Asians are the largest minority group, I believe. And so when people say Asian, they automatically mean South Asian. You know, the mayor of London is a South Asian guy. So it's like they have more people who are visible who are South Asian. I mean, it's changing. There's so many more South Asians in media and politics as well.
Do you think Amaya Pawar was under pressure by being the first? The first, always the first person's under pressure. But do you think he had faced particular pressure that we don't even know about?
I don't think he had necessarily pressure, but I don't think he was, you know, treated the same way. I don't know if he got the support that he needed as a person of color, that other, you know, because, you know, he's not Latino, like he's not Hispanic. So, you know, there's so many resources. I'm not saying it's great for Latinos or Hispanics in the city, but, you know, they're more politically active in the last couple of years. Being South Asian probably was hard. It probably, you know, because it's not like there's these coalitions of, you know, there are more different South Asian groups, but there's not like there's all these political groups and, you know, people putting up a candidate and things like that. So I think he probably did have that pressure.
I'm going to make a transition. A couple things I really have to ask you about. I always tell this to people. Rummana Hussain, before she became an editor here at the Sun-Times, for years covered the criminal court building. Today's front page and my beloved bright one, Chicago Sun-Times, cops, Fox has got to go. We talked about Jussie Smollett last week for a long time. It doesn't seem like this story.
Going.
Yeah. What do you make of this one? Cops, Fox got to go.
Well, these were suburban police chiefs, and I think the Chicago FOP had a news conference yesterday, and the Harvey police chief had actually disagreed with them. So I think that was pretty interesting. I think most of there was kind of a racial element to this. If you saw the press conference, it was mostly white police chiefs.
I'm looking at the picture right now, yeah.
So the Harvey police chief, I believe, is African-American and said, you know, I respect what they had to say, but I don't agree with them. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't know if you saw that there was a former assistant state's attorney who filed a petition yesterday asking for an independent investigator to look into see whether Kim Foxx interfered with the case. And then today, there also was a former appellate court judge who had filed a petition asking for the same thing. So I don't think this case is ever going to end. I mean, because today we had Mark Garagos respond to the city's basically, the city put out a statement yesterday saying that they're going to file a lawsuit. They're in the midst of
Rom's
filing
trying to get the money.
Yeah, he's trying to get the money. And today Smollett's attorneys say, we're not paying. He's not paying, and if this does go to court, civil court, you know, Rom and Chief, basically Eddie Johnson are going to have to be deposed or testify.
Yeah, I do not believe, and this will be something we'll be talking about. Looks like for a long time to come, Rummana. I do not believe Jussie Smollett's going to let this go to court because a lot of stuff could come out that he doesn't want to come out. So he may just want to pay that fine and you know, settle this thing.
It's going to, I don't know. This seems to have, like, every time you think there's going to be no Jussie Smollett story in the day, like, there's another Jussie Smollett story. So it's, I think this is going to go on for a while, I think.
I got a feeling that Lori Lightfoot is going to sort of lower the volume on Jussie Gate, if you get what I'm saying. As far as Rom, like, he's riding his baby, you know. So I guess this is his way of thinking. If he talks a lot about this, people forget
that he was mayor?
that he was mayor and then basically was booted out of town. Anyway, one last question before I let you go. Lori Lightfoot is throwing out the first pitch today at the Sox game. I got that right?
Yes. Yeah. She is throwing out the first pitch at the Sox game. And then my friend and former colleague who works for the Chicago Tribune, Lisa Donovan, had tweeted that she's also going to be throwing out the first pitch at the home opener for the Cubs. And one of her colleagues at the Tribune made a joke that, wow, she's flip-flopping already. I think she's supposed to be a Sox fan. So
she said she was a Sox fan here. My question to her is, why isn't she a Cleveland Indian fan or a Cincinnati Red fan? You are from Ohio, okay? And she goes, I only go with winners. Well, that's kind of a paraphrase. Of course, you're not many winners at on this city when it comes to baseball. All right, Rummana is saying great job as always. The Rummana Rundown every Friday at 1:30. Joanna Klonsky on deck. She's getting ready to talk all the creep news of the day. And apparently, I didn't even get a chance to talk Joe Biden with Rummana, but I'm sure I'll bring it up with Joanna.
All the people he's hugging now, he gets their permission. That's what he said.
Okay, he's getting signed statements.
2 guys so far.
I just want you to know I had permission to hug Lonnie. Anyway.
That Joe's got a million of them. All right, Rummana, thanks a lot. Have a great weekend.
You too.
We got Joanna Klonsky coming on. We'll be right back after this.
The Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you by the Chicago Sun-Times. For the latest in Chicago and Illinois news, sports, weather, and the latest in national news from a real Chicago frame of mind and real Chicago writers, check out the Chicago Sun-Times. Read the daily paper or online at chicago.suntimes.com. And hey, if you have a little extra cash, subscribe. And by the Chicago Reader. For a deeper dive in the daily Chicago news and for all of what's going on in this city, you gotta read the Reader. Music, arts and culture, film, extensive event calendars, concert listings, and more, including weekly political columns from writers like Maya Dukmasova and, yes, our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader is free in newsstands and at chicagoreader.com. That's chicagoreader.com.
Hey guys, hour number 2 of the Ben Joravsky Show for your Friday, April 5th is just moments away. But before we get into said hour number 2, we would like to thank the following unions for bringing the Ben Joravsky Show back and helping make this possible here. First off, thank you to the International Association of Machinist and Aerospace Workers, not Aerosmith, Local 126 and District 8, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Thank you once again to those unions for jumping on board with us here. And of course, today's show is brought to you by our friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Hour number 2, let's go. Yes, thank goodness it is Friday, April 5th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Reader Studio, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. In this hour of the program, we welcome political strategist Joanna Klonsky, and it's Roosevelt University professor / author, David Faris. And now your host, not a professor, but I think an author.
Yeah, not a professor, though. Definitely not a professor.
Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Yes, indeed. Joanna Klonsky is in the studio. Can't wait to talk politics. I'm going to ask her that shame question. Is it unfair for old-timers to try to shame millennials into behaving like old-timers? So she has time to think about and answer that one. And yes, folks, David Faris will be here in a half an hour. He's the author of the book, It's Time to Fight Dirty. Democrats should be more like Republicans. Fight dirty, and so I'll have to ask him about my new love for Nancy Pelosi. I'm kind of curious with Joanna. I'm writing that down. Ask Joanna about Nancy Pelosi. All right, we'll have a lot to talk about with Joanna, but before we bring her on, what you got from a young man?
Well, we have some updates here. A big announcement, but first, we have to talk to our live streamers, all right? Some people are on the live stream. They're sending their messages, and we like to communicate with them. First off, Jay Marie, I guess she was listening to our interview with Rummana Hussain here. She says, everyone does not think voting is as important as other people do. I don't get why people don't get that.
Well, I'm going to ask Joanna Klonsky about that. That is true. That was the whole point. Some people just don't care. You know what I'm saying? I'm utterly obsessed with this. This is my life since I was like 8 when I first became obsessed with politics. So I think you're pretty much right. When 68% of the people in the city of Chicago don't vote in the mayoral election, I think it's proving her point that most people don't care.
Our good buddy Pat Rod weighed in. He's been listening since the beginning here because he is talking about Bewitched. He said, "Oh God, not Larry." And Pat Rod also said, "I don't get why people think voting isn't important." And finally here, we got a message. This may count as spam. I'm not sure. It's from Donna. Donna says, all our sinners choose wrong under God's wrath. You can't save yourself. Only way to be saved is through faith in eternal, sinless Son, Jesus Christ.
Okay.
She's weighed in on there.
All right. Well, thank you for
We
that
got
one.
listeners of all kinds. Thank you for listening if you're an actual person. All right. Now to the big announcement. The Ben Joravsky Show has reached 1,000 likes on Facebook.
Yeah,
That is right, people.
After we were blown up the last one, but let's not talk about that.
Okay, let's not live in the past. We had like 4,500 on the last one.
Yeah,
we're into 1,000 now. All
so
right?
we get giving away cars?
No, we're not doing that. Oh, also, by the way, our buddy Pete in Plainfield, who gave us that little Hot Wheel Mustang, he's listening. How's it going, Pete in Plainfield? All right.
Love that card.
All right. And so let's get to the caption contest here, as we always do here. Well, we hit 1,000. I said we have a caption contest. This time, the picture just begging for your caption on the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page is a picture that was taken, I believe, yesterday or maybe 2 days ago. I'm not sure. When Lori Lightfoot began her transition and met up with Mayor Rahm Emanuel.
Oh, yeah. That's a great picture.
All right, the picture is Mayor Rahm holding, touching Lori Lightfoot's back as they walk into some room. I'm not sure what's going to happen there, but that is the picture begging for your caption. I'll try and interrupt you guys here a little later on to read some of the captions. But once again, head over to the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show. Ben, spell that last name for him.
JORAV as in victory, as my beloved Bulls will do tonight, SKY.
So you have no excuse. If you're listening to this and you've yet to like the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page, give it a like, leave us a caption. We're going to be reading them on the air. And when we last did the show on radio, we couldn't curse. If you send us one that's cursing and it's not too crazy, we'll read it. All right? Yeah.
Joanna, feel free to curse. We're podcasting.
Yeah, sure. I'll put explicit. I'll put explicit on it.
We've already had a couple people already do that.
Hey, we're talking to you, Monroe Anderson.
Monroe Anderson.
Sailor.
Yeah, so
I'm gonna try to keep it clean, but I make no guarantees.
Yeah, so Joanna Klonsky, I'm now putting you in the position of being spokesperson for all millennials everywhere. Are we wrong? Is my generation wrong to shame millennials into voting or to feeling they should vote?
Yeah, you're wrong because it's an ineffective approach, and there have been a million scientific studies to demonstrate this. Shaming people into voting doesn't work. Shaming millennials doesn't work. By the way, millennials are older than you think. I'm a millennial. I'm 34 years old, kids.
I'm a millennial. I'm 35.
Yeah. So if you're talking about young voters, 18 to 35, you got to start a little earlier than millennials now.
Okay. So what are they, Zs?
You're in Z range, buddy.
Zs.
Young people don't vote in response to shame from old people.
Well, let me ask you this.
Young people don't do anything in response to shame from old people.
But they try to shame old people. That's what I just. In other words, it's a what is it? A one-way street with the younger people. They are not above trying to shame. Like for instance, on this point, they will try to shame older people about shaming them into voting. Shame on you for trying to shame me into voting.
Yeah, I mean, let's just leave shame out of the process of voting. It's not a useful tactic. It actually can depress the vote. So don't do it.
All right, well, let's talk about that. 68% did not vote, I believe. I don't have the exact number. I think that's 32% turnout. Is that about right in this last mayoral election?
I haven't even had time to
take that deep dive.
Go to the grocery store yet, or make my bed since the election. So I don't know.
So do you have any sense what tactic does work to get people to come out and vote?
Yeah, the same thing that works to get people to do everything else, which is organizing, inspiring people, connecting, meeting people where they're at, understanding why they feel disengaged, finding something to help them feel engaged. Like, people don't vote for a reason because they don't think that it makes a difference. They don't believe in the process. There's no one who they find inspiring, or they don't know enough information. They don't have access to the information. Those are the problems that you have to solve if you want to increase turnout. You don't increase turnout by doing the whole, if you don't vote, you don't have the right to complain, blah, blah, blah. All those cliches are so played out. They don't work. Give it up.
Well, in this last election then, since so few people voted, relatively speaking, let's say 32%. But let's just say it was 32%. I'm not quite sure where it was.
Yeah, it was in the
32 to 34%. Yeah. It was lower than it was in February.
Well, let's see when all the vote by mail ballots come in and are counted as well. Because remember, in February, everyone was lamenting lowest turnout in history. Then the vote by mail ballots came in, and people were like, "Oh, actually, it was decent."
All right, let's say it was 35% turnout. I'm upping it up. The point is that more people don't vote than do vote by a significant number. Do you think that's expressing a feeling? I think I know the answer to this one. That Chicago government has not, in any real meaningful way, met needs of people in this city, met their concerns, been where, seen the world that they live in, and try to address policies so it improves the livelihoods of people in the city.
Well, I think we're dealing with a long legacy of people being disengaged intentionally. I always tell the story of like when the day that Mayor Daley announced he was retiring, I was 25 or 26 years old at that point, and I had grown up here in a pretty political family. And I was shocked because it had never occurred to me that he could one day retire. And I felt so disengaged from the process because he was just like, you also can't vote to approve or elect like God. And so I think that's part of the Chicago political culture. It has been for a long time. It's just like decisions are made on high in a back room that has nothing to do with you. If you're not from a particular family or from a particular organization, there's no on-ramp for you. Mm-hmm. I think that's really changing, and I think it's changed a lot in the last 10 years, particularly because there's been a lot more laws to improve voter access. So now we have online voter registration. Now we have same-day voter registration where you can, if you're not registered, you can show up at the polls and register and then vote right then. You have a grace period. If you're not registered after the deadline, you can still, go to a certain location registered. And now we're moving into implementing automatic voter registration. Those things really do change the process where people used to, if you want young people to vote, we didn't have online voter registration in Illinois until a couple of years ago. You're telling me you want young people to do a thing and it's not available online? Okay, well, what kind of message does that send? So those are the kinds of things that I think we're seeing them finally start to get addressed. But it's been a long time coming. Those things don't get changed overnight. It's a real culture shift that we're trying to make happen here.
All right, you alluded to Joanna, Mayor Daley stepping down in 2011, the mayoral election. You were a very young political strategist, and you worked for Miguel del Valle, who got, I believe, 10 to 11% of the vote. I'm doing this from memory, but it was
like 10.
10. Okay.
I don't remember either.
I inflated it to 11. Give him a go.
You got 30%. Let's just inflate it a little more.
He got 41%.
He basically won the election.
Yeah, he won with a recount.
The mayor.
But anyway, did not do very well. I voted for him, but that just shows you, why he wouldn't do well. Anybody I vote for usually loses. This time around, you worked for Lori Lightfoot. She was triumphant. What has changed, if anything, in the city of Chicago, where Miguel del Valle, a candidate you supported in 2011, gets trounced, and the candidate you supported, who probably had lesser name recognition than del Valle did, at least at the start of this cycle, was victorious?
Well, okay, so this is actually my third mayoral election. I'm one of the few weirdos in this town who've worked on 3 discrete, separate mayoral campaigns. So I was Miguel del Valle's press secretary. I worked on Chuy Garcia's campaign in 2015 in the runoff. Mm-hmm. And then I was a consultant to Lori's campaign, which obviously was just extremely victorious. I think there's a very clear through line between those 3 campaigns and some along the way where there was this movement for reform and for progress, progressive policy change that was building over time and slowly gaining momentum. I think there's also that through line also goes through the election of Fritz Kagi and the unseating of Joe Barrios back in 2018.
For Cook County assessor.
For Cook County tax assessor. So where you're seeing machine structures that have had stranglehold on the political process in Chicago for decades slowly begin to unravel. Mm-hmm. And I really think that this was like the final, so much of that machine stuff really fell apart in this Lori Lightfoot election. But I think that it started in many ways in that 2011 when it was the first open mayoral seat since the election of Harold Washington in 1983. We sort of got Rahm imposed on us. It was really difficult he had so much money, so much, the political power structure was so united behind him, and it was really difficult for anyone. I mean, Miguel del Valle, I think in any other environment, he was the second highest ranking elected official in the city. He was the city clerk at the time. Mm-hmm. He was the highest ranking Latino elected official in the city at the time. He had been a state senator. He was well respected. He was well known. In another environment, he should have been a very strong candidate for mayor. Mm-hmm. Now, he was also a reformer, and he's, a progressive, and all of the corporate interests were never going to dump money on his head. But that's where that election was. And I think that the thing that was unique and interesting about this 2019 mayor's race that we just completed is that the power structure in Chicago was never unified behind one person or the other. There was Daley, some folks were with Daley, some folks were with Susana Mendoza, there was Tony. Most of the powerful interests in the city were not united. We're not with Lori. Almost none of them were. Actually, none of them were until the runoff.
Until the runoff. Then they all came running.
And so she was able to take advantage of the divisions in the power structure and the most powerful class of the city.
Well, there was
run up the middle.
Something else when you were going down the list of attributes for Miguel de Valle, and I'll put another one on there, and I mean this sincerely. He's a gentleman. He always treats people with respect.
100%.
He listens to what they say. And I recall this at the time it was used against him. Ram, let's face it, folks. I'm not going to swear, D. But
come on, Ben, swear.
No,
say it.
Not going to do it.
Everyone can't accept Ben. That's the rule.
Yeah, because when we make our return to radio, I don't want to get in trouble with bad habits. But anyway, Ram was a jerk, and he was proud of it back in 2011. And I remember writing an article about this. Can Chicago have a nice guy like Miguel de Valle be mayor? Or do you have to be, quote unquote, a tough jerk like Mayor Ram? And I think the electorate in 2011 sort of bought into the idea. Well, we had a tough jerk Daley, was mean and got red and yelled at people, and so we got to continue that tradition. Have we weeded ourselves? We divorced ourselves from that notion, Joanna?
I always kind of thought that was BS, to be honest with you. I mean, Chicago people like a tough guy or a tough person. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean you have to be a jerk. There's a way to be tough. There's a way to stand up strongly for what you believe in and be demanding and demand certain things happen without, calling people names, without saying nasty things about them, without putting, I forget some of the famous Ramisms, telling people to take their tampons out or whatever.
I think there was an F word in front of the tampon.
Take their effing tampons out. You don't have to, you can be firm and be tough and not be messed with in a very Chicago way without being a jerk to people. And I think that's the thing that maybe this election shows. Because Lori is no pushover. She's a tough lady, but that's different from the stuff you're talking about.
Well, you like to try to treat people with respect as much as possible. And when I put this question to Miguel de Valle, I'm just going to bring this up because I love his response so much. He said that I'm paraphrasing Miguel de Valle. I graduated from Thule High on the northwest side of Chicago, rough and tumble school. Ram went to New Trier. So who do you think is tougher, Ben? I remember him telling me that.
I remember that too, actually. I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
I remember it very well. No, I mean, Miguel is nice, but he was no pushover either, right? I mean, I remember being on the campaign trail with him and him telling me some of the stories about what it was like growing up for him in the neighborhood at the time. So I think he always sort of thought that characterization that he was nice and Ram was mean was always nonsense anyway, and irrelevant to governing.
All right. Now, here we are. We could talk local politics forever with Joanna Klonsky, political strategist. And she was, in the last term, I don't know if you're going to still do this, no, she's shaking her head. No, she's not even going to get the question out. The spokesperson for the Progressive Caucus in the City Council. I don't even know if we're going to have it. We're still going to have a Progressive Caucus in the City Council?
Yes, we're still going to have a Progressive Caucus. I don't know what my role is going to be moving forward, but I'm always going to be Team Progressive Caucus. I'm excited to see what happens. They've picked up a bunch of new, a whole bunch of new progressive faces that are going to join the progressive movement in the city council. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be a different city council, that is for sure.
Well, before we transition into national news, you know who that alderman was that said, what was it yesterday about, hey, take it easy on these council meetings. Remember they're giving Lightfoot advice?
Oh, my goodness.
That was quote.
Yeah, we had so much fun with
Who's
that.
the mysterious alderman?
Yeah. It was... Why, they revealed it?
No, I don't know.
We were having fun with that one with Mick Dumke yesterday, Joanna, because some alderman was interviewed by Fran Spielman in the Sun-Times. He or she, I don't know, the gender wasn't revealed, so I'll just say they. They said, if Lori doesn't do what I want to do or something like that, I'm going to da-da-da-da-da. She's got to treat us with respect. I'm like, well, if you've got so much guts, why don't you say who you are?
Put your name on it.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I mean, I think what's different right now is there's a lot of uncertainty and it's making people antsy. A lot of aldermen are used to being controlled, or they're used to a certain dynamic. Ram has always his staff has always really micromanaged the city council down to the level of handing out talking points for individual aldermen and saying I want you to say these exact words. And people just don't know what Lori's relationship is going to be with city council yet, and that's making people anxious. I think we're going to see people calm down in the next couple of weeks as they start to get their feet back under them and start to realize that, what's important here is getting the mandate, the progressive policy mandate. Lori was just elected with 74% of the vote. She's got a mandate, and she wants to get it done now.
Well, I got to tell you, it was obsessive behavior by Rahm in terms of getting the vote out. When Sue Garza, alderwoman, I should say, Sue Garza was here last week. She told a story, Joanna, about how Rahm was really pressuring her to vote on the Lincoln Yards deal. She didn't want to. She wanted to vote no. And he goes, I named a school after your dad.
Oh, my God.
And it was
no, he didn't. You're kidding
me. No,
me.
she was in that chair, and she told us that very story.
That's called chutzpah.
That's a nice way of calling it, you know.
To say the very least.
But whatever. So I would hope.
That's outrageous.
It is outrageous. You only need 26 votes, Madam Mayor or Mr. Mayor. You only need 26 votes. You don't have to break everybody's arm to get the 48-2 or something, or 50-0. It's a little obsessive behavior. All right. She's our expert on creepy behavior by male politicians. We haven't even got to that because we could talk to Joanna about politics forever and ever. Let's talk about it. Let's start at the top. Joe Biden, Vice President.
Boy, Uncle Joe.
Well, we call him Grandpa Joe here on this show. But
well, I
whatever.
actually have a Grandpa Joe, so I don't want to. My grandpa is Grandpa Joe, so I don't want to sully actual Grandpa Joe's name. Man, Joe Biden, what are you doing, bud?
I just want you to know I had permission to hug Lonnie. Anyway.
All right, there we go.
Cool. So let's just make a very hilarious joke out of it.
But wait, there's more.
By the way, he gave me permission to touch him.
So, all right, let's just start. That's
why?
Joe. That's his speech. Was it yesterday?
I was today with the IBEW.
All right, okay, that was today's speech. We played it, so clearly, focus groups. That's what I was trying to think of earlier, where they put groups of people, voters together to get a general sense of what would work as a message. So, all right, your reaction. You actually sent me the story. Always my ace creep reporter in the field.
At all hours, I'm like, Ben, did you see this creepy article about this creepy guy?
Creepy guy being our vice president, our former vice president, Joe Biden.
God.
All right, just so folks who may not have seen it, remind them what was in the story.
Okay, so here's what happened. In, let's see, former Nevada Lieutenant Governor candidate Lucy Flores tells the story in New York Magazine last week that Joe Biden came up behind her and took a deep inhale and smelled her hair and then gave her a big slow kiss on the back of her head at an event. This is during her 2014 campaign. And so she wrote this essay about how that made her feel embarrassed and shocked and alarmed. The quote was, "I wanted nothing more than to get Biden away from me." Biden said he has no memory of having acted inappropriately towards her, but added that if he was in the wrong, he would, quote, listen respectfully. You'll notice that is not an apology. Mm-hmm. He has yet to actually apologize. He did post a weird YouTube video that was not an apology, but it was like a 2-minute rambling speech about how social mores have changed, and whereas showing physical affection was a way to show support in the past, now he knows he needs to be more mindful, but he never says sorry. And it's weird. It was, I thought it was a wrong-headed response. And then today, apparently at this event where he also made a bunch of really inappropriate jokes, as Dennis just played, he also doubled down. He said, somebody asked, I should mention, there are also a bunch of other accusations very similar to Lucy Flores's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 that I've just pulled up right now. So this is kind of a thing that he does.
Wait, these are 7...
It's 7 women saying that he's done weird stuff. It's not exactly, sexual assault, but it's like he did different weird stuff to make people feel uncomfortable touching.
Yeah.
Where one woman said he squeezed her shoulders, complimented her smile, and held her for a beat too long. That kind of thing, which has led to a lot of debate over, okay, well, where's the line? Is this sexual harassment? Is this inappropriate? If it's making people uncomfortable, it's making people uncomfortable. But how do you know? How do you be affectionate and friendly towards people, particularly if you're doing retail politics, you're on the campaign trail, you're touching people all the time in some way, shape, or form. So how do you know? And, it's really struck a chord with me because I work in politics and I deal with guys like Joe Biden. There's always a guy like that. And sometimes it's hard to name it because it's not exactly sexual in nature, but it makes you uncomfortable and you notice it. So how do you deal with it? So it seems like Biden has a habit of doing weird stuff that makes people a little uncomfortable, and it's in that gray zone where you can't quite say it's sexual, or there's debate about whether it's sexual, but if it's making people uncomfortable, it's making people uncomfortable, and that's an important point. So that's kind of what's been going on with this. Today, he said he was asked if he owed these women a direct apology. He said, "I'm sorry I didn't understand more. I am not sorry for any of my intentions. I am not sorry for anything that I have ever done. I've never been disrespectful intentionally to a man or a woman. That's not the reputation I've had since I was in high school, for God's sakes."
What was the opening line? I'm sorry for what?
I'm sorry I didn't understand more.
I'm sorry
I'm not sorry for any of my intentions.
Wow. What is the distinction there? That obviously, well, I should strike obviously from the sentence. And this could be my cynicism. Rummana and I just had a conversation about cynicism, Joanna.
Yeah.
Every comment uttered by a politician these days, I have the feeling, is constructed by a team of speechwriters who tell him or her what to say, with the possible exception of Donald Trump, who seems to have done very well from just doing Donald Trump. So do you think what Joe Biden said was Joe Biden talk, or do you think that was some kind of crafted speech by a speechwriter intended to say all the right things and get him out of this situation?
I think that the video that he posted yesterday or 2 days ago was a scripted thing. It was pretty clearly scripted. I think this comment that he just made seems like it was off the cuff. That's not the reputation I've had since I was in high school, for God's sake. I strongly doubt that somebody wrote that talking point for him.
Yeah, for God's sake.
Well,
yeah.
Joe Biden always adds those little, that's his thing, right?
Yeah.
He'll always add, for God's sakes, or he has little, like ad libs that he likes to throw around. The point is not really, to me, whether it's scripted or not. The point is how often you see these situations and how rare it is that the person who has done wrong actually knows how to issue an appropriate apology.
Yeah.
That acknowledges that harm was done, that explains why it was done, that identifies what is being done, what the person has done to make sure it doesn't happen again, and that actually says the words, "I'm sorry for X, Y, and Z." It's extremely rare.
Yeah.
And it's not that hard, but it's very hard for a lot of these men. Hi.
Joanna Klonsky is in the studio with me, political strategist. My next guest, David Faris, has walked in the studio. I always love when my guests show up early. But we're going to continue our conversation with Joanna before we bring David on. Joanna, I have to ask you this. In your humble opinion, do you think all these revelations about Joe Biden and his behavior disqualify him to be the Democrats' nominee?
I don't know the answer to that, but to me, that's not even the disqualifying thing. It's what we have an opportunity right now. There are so many women running. There's such a diverse field of Democrats running. Why go back? Why go back to the old, previous generation that's already had power? He's already been the vice president. He's had his time. So to me, that's what it is more than anything else. Yes, I have some serious concerns about whether this stuff is going to, first of all, make him politically, it's all a political liability for him on the trail. But two, do we need to, why in this moment? Why? When we have so many other options, we don't need to do this. So there's a lot of people right now doing the whole we need Biden because he's the most viable opponent to Trump. Well, listen, okay, guys, none of you know. Nobody knows that right now.
Yeah.
Everyone's just guessing.
Yeah.
Let's admit that.
Well, remember the time when Ann Coulter was on Bill Maher and they asked her who she thought had a best chance of winning, and she said Trump, and the entire audience laughed at her. So you never know.
You never know. Well, speaking of Trump, he his front page story headline says, "Finding Biden in familiar fix, President jabs," and Donald Trump sent out a meme. I don't know if you saw this one on on Twitter, Donald Trump, master of Twitter, making fun of Joe Biden. And so Donald Trump is going to try to use this.
Which is so ironic since he's literally a serial sexual predator, and we all know that. He's just never been held to account for any of it.
Mm-hmm. Before I bring in David to join the conversation, and I really hope you stick around, Joanna, because we're going to be talking national politics and what the Democrats should do to fight Donald Trump and win back the White House. What other updates are there on the creep report beat, aside from Joe Biden?
The creep beat.
Well, the last thing that I want to say about the Joe Biden situation is the role Alyssa Milano has played. I don't know if you caught this.
No.
Alyssa Milano, actress, former star of Charmed.
Who's the boss?
Who's the boss? Who's been a real outspoken, advocate on some Me Too issues and other feminist issues, but, retweeted this crapola non-apology apology video from Joe Biden with some praise for him. And she's tweeted a couple of times defending him. And it's just the classic thing of like, well, Joe Biden's never been, or XYZ guy has never been inappropriate with me, and therefore he is absolved. And it's just the worst thing that women can do to each other.
Yeah, we've talked about this so many.
It's my favorite theme because it drives me bonkers. It's like, just because it hasn't happened to you doesn't mean it's not a thing. Don't do this anymore, women. Like, it doesn't help. It hurts. Alyssa Milano, you don't have to do that. You're not helping anyone.
I don't know what is motivating her to do it. I don't know if she has like a great relationship with Joe Biden, or maybe she thinks Joe Biden is the best.
She loves Joe Biden.
She loves Joe Biden. Well, there is something about Joe Biden that is, in a bizarre way, kind of lovable. The Onion used to make. I don't know if you ever saw The Onion. They turned Joe Biden into a car geek and who loved working on muscle cars and stuff like that. There was just something about Joe Biden. I think he is like a natural rival to Trump. He's like a different type. I'm not saying he should be the nominee. You raise some good points. A lot of people come on this show say the same thing, that we should look to the future and we not should go back to the past to beat Donald Trump. But the first poll result that Dennis cited, 56% of voters or Democrats, I don't know if it was voters or Democrats, said that this should not disqualify him. So my guess is they did a focus group or some kind of internal poll, Joanna, and that's when they decided to make jokes about it. They figured out they got it behind them. Now they're going to make jokes about it.
Yeah, that may well be the case. That's the problem with when you have people making decisions based on polls and alone, without social context and without having like women who have lived experience with this sort of situation in the conversation.
That's Joanna Klonsky. I'm Ben Joravsky. David Faris is in the studio. I hope Joanna will stick around. I don't know how busy she is. We're going to take a break.
I got to roll. Bye, guys.
Oh, all right, Joanna Klonsky. It's great to have you here. When we come back, we'll have David Faris. We'll be talking national politics. I'm going to ask him the Nancy Pelosi question. Am I too enamored with Nancy Pelosi? Look, he's already ready to answer. I wanted to hear Joanna on this one. Anyway, we'll be right back with David Faris.
Hey there, producer Dennis here. Thanks for finding and listening to the brand new Ben Joravsky Show. All right, so here's how this works. The Ben Joravsky Show live streams on the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel Tuesday through Friday, 1 until 3 p.m. Once the show is over, you can listen to the replay on our YouTube channel, or we throw it online for you to download by 4 p.m. Where can you download the Ben Joravsky Show, you may be asking yourself? Well, you may be asking yourself a fantastic question. You can find previous Ben Joravsky shows and guest interviews through several outlets. The Chicago Sun-Times Online, chicago.suntimes.com, the Chicago Reader Online, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, pick one. Just search for The Ben Joravsky Show. J-O-R-A, V as in victory, S-K-Y. So, let's recap. Tuesday through Friday, 1 until 3 p.m. Live streamed on the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel and downloadable by 4 at chicago.suntimes.com, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcast. Yes, the Ben Joravsky Show is back. We're live and downloaded. Tell your friends and enjoy the rest of the show. If you would like to advertise with the Ben Joravsky Show, and who wouldn't, contact Tracy Baim at publisher@chicagoreadercorp.com. We have several advertising options for your business or organization, and quite frankly, we would love nothing more than to tell our listeners all about it. Once again, that's Tracy Baim at publisher@chicagoreadercorp, that's CORP as in Paul.com, to advertise with the Ben Joravsky Show, the Chicago Reader, and the Chicago Sun-Times. We look forward to plugging you. Okay, well, that came out kind of weird. More of the Ben Joravsky Show live and downloaded in moments.
Commercial break over. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
And Joanna Klonsky has left the building. But David Faris is here sitting in her stead. David Faris, Roosevelt University political science professor, author of the book, It's Time to Fight Dirty, How Democrats Can Build a Lasting Majority in American Politics, tells it like it is what Democrats should do. Stop rolling over, let the Republicans run all over you. It's basically the theme of the David Faris book. David, welcome back. Always fun talking politics with you.
Hey, great to be here.
I got to start at the top. I had booked David to be on the show, and after I had booked him to be on the show, I went on one of my riffs where I was extolling the virtues of Nancy Pelosi, and one of our listeners, Bab, said, bring David Faris on the show. He'll set you straight about Nancy Pelosi.
Hey, Babbers, what's happening?
So anyway, Bab, here he is, the man, the myth, the legend, David Faris in the studio. So what's your take on Nancy Pelosi?
I mean, I'm also a Nancy Pelosi fan.
So, sorry, Bab.
I hate to disappoint you.
Okay, well, let's talk about why are you?
So, I mean, I think that she's, at this point, a pretty legendary leader in the House of Representatives. And I think that she, was largely responsible for the Democratic strategy in 2018 that got the House back. And she's done a great job keeping the caucus together during the Trump administration. So you have not had a lot of Democrats peeling off to vote with the president, to betray the Democrats. I think that she wields a lot of influence behind the scenes in terms of making sure that there's a unified message coming out of the Democratic Party about the Trump administration's policies. And I think that's great. I'm a big fan of H.R. 1, the big voting and corruption reform bill that the Democrats passed out of the House. And it went beyond what I thought Pelosi and the Democrats would actually do, and it doesn't go far enough in my humble opinion. But I think it's further than I thought the Democrats would go. It has procedures for reenfranchising every former felon in America. It has procedures for effectively counterfeiting these voter ID laws. I'd like to see them go about it a different way. But anyway, the point is, I think that she's doing as much as she can with the role that she has, and I assume the people are upset with her because she said, it might not be the time for impeachment if the Mueller report doesn't, charge the president with a crime or have something obviously impeachable. And, this is a really tough question, the question of impeachment, because we know that the president will not be removed from office, right? So in the Senate, right? There's no way that we're peeling off, 18 Republican senators, if not more, to vote with Democrats to take Trump out of office,
or have every Democrat vote.
Right.
To think about Joe Manchin, you know what I mean? Every Democrat in the Senate would have to vote.
You need those 47. You need 20 Republican senators to remove him from office. So, I mean, give me a list of names that you think people like. That's a short list. Like Lisa Murkowski, maybe.
No, no way.
Mitt Romney, maybe, but probably not. Right? No. Probably the number is 0.
Yeah.
And so, what you have to come back to is a question of, do the impeachment proceedings in the House justify politically the risk that Democrats are taking by impeaching the president? I think that the move to say, like, we want to see the Mueller report before we make this decision is very smart, because had Democrats gone through, if we were already in the midst of impeachment proceedings when this Barr letter came out, I think that would have made the Democrats' position even weaker on this question. And the reality is there may be stuff in the Mueller report that details, very clear obstruction of justice that I would say go ahead and, you know, do the impeachment, impeach him in the House. I think that there's reason enough in terms of the future of the American democratic experiment to at least be on record as a party as saying, you know, we can't have the president doing this, you know, even if you lose in the Senate. I can also see the case that, you know, you don't want to give the president this momentous victory when he is acquitted in the Senate by the full Senate. Sort of exactly what happened to Bill Clinton in 98, 99. So, you know, I don't have extremely strong opinions about whether Democrats should impeach the president. I too would like to see the Mueller report, and despite, you know, a week of us all saying we're in the post-Mueller world, it's like, we're not.
No.
No one has seen the report except Bill Barr and Rod Rosenstein.
All right, before
and people that wrote it.
Yeah, before we get to the polls, we're a lot of Mueller questions for you, but something you said, I just took notes on it. The unified message that she's done a good job, Nancy Pelosi, in your humble opinion, of having a unified message from the Democrats in response to Donald Trump. And I agree with you on that point. I think the criticism from my friends of the lefty persuasion is that she hasn't been advancing the democratic ideals, and sort of like the Green New Deal, for instance. She's not been advancing the ideals of the new freshmen, representatives that have come in, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, be the foremost person on that one, that she sort of distanced herself from them. I have my opinions about that. What is your opinion about how she's reacted to these new ideals that the Democrats have put up forth?
You know, I think that she's trying to walk a tough line, you know, because in very real ways, the Democrats' majority in the House depends on a series of districts where they won very small victories in 2018 that are kind of moderate districts generally. And she doesn't want the party to get ahead of where public opinion is in terms of keeping the House in 2020, right? Because if we win the presidency and the Senate, but we lose the House back, you know, we might as well, you know, we can prevent calamity, but we're not going to be able to do much of anything legislatively, including anything that Ocasio-Cortez and her friends want to do, which I generally support. But I also think the Green New Deal is right now, it's an idea. It's not a policy. You know, the messaging coming out of Ocasio-Cortez's camp about what exactly is in the Green New Deal has changed a few times. You know, like the initial draft that Republicans made so much fun of about, you know, cows. And, you know, we don't want plane travel.
Yeah.
You know, would you really have wanted Pelosi to go out and introduce that as a bill the next day? Yeah. Or, you know, I think that she's gone further than she might have in terms of saying, like, you know, this is a starting point, you know, but I'm obviously not going to pass this through the House tomorrow morning as a package without debating it, without thinking the politics through. I think that there was no downside to the politics of the voting reform and the corruption reform bill that got passed. With the Green New Deal, with anything like Medicare for All, you know, there are legitimate downsides to passing that legislation, and I think Pelosi may want some of that litigated in the primary rather than having the House of Representatives make the decision about what the policy platform of the next Democratic president is going to be.
That is a very good point. Litigated in the primary, well put. In other words, let the Democratic voters speak where they want the country to go, what direction they want the party to go. Of course, the problem, if you litigate it in the primary from a strategist viewpoint, is they may litigate it in a different in a place that not all Democrats want to be. So, for instance, they may go toward a Biden-esque figure, somebody who's a centrist, which would alienate the left, and so we'd be in a situation quite similar to the one we were just emerged from in 2016. This is the challenge that all Democrats face, including Nancy Pelosi. Do you see any way out of this one, David?
Well, no. I mean, you're never going to have a way out of it, because the reality is America should have like 4 or 5 political parties, and we're always going to have 2 parties in which we have crammed together a bunch of different coalitions with you know, very different ideological predilections. And so the reality that there will always be a left, center, and right of the Democratic Party is, it will be with us today. It will be with us if we win in 2020. It will be with us if we lose in 2020. I think it is, you know, it is fine for each of the factions in the party to push as hard as they think that they should to fight for what they believe in. It's not, I think, the role of the party leadership in the House particularly when they're in the minority, to automatically take the side of one of those factions in all of these fights. And so, I like most of what's in the Green New Deal. I'm, I don't know if I'm for Bernie Sanders' version of Medicare for all, but I'm certainly for a significant expansion of healthcare. And, personally, because I have mixed feelings about some of these policies and I'm open to persuasion. I'd actually really just like to hear people talking about them in public. Like if you believe a public option is better than Medicare for all, like tell me why. If you believe that Medicare for all and the way that Bernie wants to execute it is the best way to go. I have some questions like how will it work? What does the transition period look like? Do we have the civil service know-how? Do we have the capacity to bring 180 million Americans into the healthcare, into a nationalized healthcare system? I don't know that the answer is no, but I want to hear our candidates talking about that before I need to see Nancy Pelosi take a side.
We had another listener, and Beth, I hope you're listening because this question is for you, who said we need to do a better job of distinguishing between these different health proposals. You just named two. Let's talk about it a little bit, help listeners out a little bit, trying to distinguish these policies, general health care policies that the Democrats have been advocating. One, Medicare for all. We associate that with Bernie Sanders. Two, the public option. What's the difference between a public option and Medicare for all?
Sure. So Medicare for all would extend the system that we use for the elderly in America, for those 65 and older. And it would sort of grant all Americans automatic entry into that system. And Bernie's plan essentially makes healthcare free at the point of service for the consumer of healthcare. It's similar to the system that they have in Canada. It's similar in a lot of ways to the system they have in the UK. Interestingly, it's a bit different than a lot of the systems in continental Europe that I personally think perform the best in terms of their sort of cost to benefit ratios. And so I think everybody, if you remember in 2008, when Obama was like, I want to do this middle of the road reform, he said if we could start over and do it from scratch, obviously, we would choose a nationalized healthcare system. The problem is getting from where we are, where you have this very extensive, complicated sort of intermediary system with private for-profit insurers that are responsible for the care of most American adults, and to get from that system to Medicare for all is probably more complicated than we think it is. And not just politically, but also logistically. Like you gotta. It's one thing to pass a law, but you also have to make sure that law is implemented and carried out capably. And in 2013. We couldn't even get a website running for the exchanges.
Stumbled at the start.
We stumbled at the start. I mean, we got it going, but it did take time. Right? And this is fundamentally a much more complicated endeavor. And so there's other options out there. Like during the debate over the Affordable Care Act in 2009 and 2010, there were a lot of Democrats pushing for a public option where individuals could buy into like basically a government insurance program. It wouldn't extend Medicare to everyone. It would create this publicly subsidized insurance plan for the self-employed or the unemployed or people with disabilities that they could buy into if they weren't employed. Because the Obamacare exchanges are not a government program. The insurer is not the government. Right? The government is sort of manipulating the market and helping individuals find a match in the private insurance industry. But it is not the American government itself running an insurance program, which is what the public option would be. So the big difference is that the public option is insurance, and Medicare for all is free care at the point of service.
And the fear of many strategists who just want the Democrats to win is that Medicare for all, as easy as a concept it is to announce, and as many people who cheer it on, would mean electoral defeat for the Democrats because it would be easily exploited by the Republicans into some sort of communist threat to capitalism as it exists right now. Do you share that fear that so many strategists have?
I mean, I always have fear of what Republicans are going to do. I think,
it's good to have that fear.
Yeah, it's good to be afraid, because things happened recently that should make us afraid. I think the reality is whatever our healthcare plan is, Republicans are going to demonize it as socialized medicine It doesn't matter what we say. We could say we want to tweak the ACA, and they're gonna run around yelling about Venezuela and mass arrests and the speech police, whatever. Again, they have a playbook that they will use against any democratic policy. They will shoehorn that policy into a narrative about a government takeover of the system in question, and they will demonize you. And so I actually think there's a very good argument to be made that if you're going to pass something, it should be as aggressive and as expansive as you think the politics and the bureaucracy can bear. And so I think that we need to be significantly more aggressive than just a public option. Right? I think that there, in some way, needs to be a phase in of a nationalized insurance industry or a nationalized healthcare industry. I just don't know that it looks exactly like Bernie's plan.
Your book, It's Time to Fight Dirty, one of the themes of the book, a general theme, is that Democrats have to employ many of the tactics the Republicans employ, use it against the Republicans, because Democrats have always assumed that, well, it's like a fair fight. Let's have like this objective analysis of healthcare and our needs and try to figure out the best way to do it. Whereas Republicans look for the weakness in the Democrats and go at it and exploit it and pound it. So I have this question for you. Let's say the roles were reversed and we had a Democratic president who was accused of colluding with Putin to win the 2016 presidency, the presidential election, and there was a report that we hadn't seen yet that was buried in the desk of the attorney general while they redacted it, so they it would be legal to release. How do you think Republicans would be reacting?
I mean, I think we'd be 3 weeks into impeachment already. I think Republicans would have impeached the president in the first 2 years, just given on what we've seen publicly the president of the United States do. This week there's this scandal about the security clearances that the Trump administration gave people like Jared Kushner. The classic. It is an administration full of just rich idiots' children. Who are somebody was stupider than their parents. And so that's that would be like a 6-month scandal in a Democratic administration. Whereas I'm sure we're going to just turn the page and that won't really go anywhere.
Yeah.
So I think that the president has done so many things, just out in the open, right? Like every weekend, this knucklehead gets on a plane and has the taxpayers pay his private resort for him to hang out there, where he conducts government business, where state secrets are being discussed over lobster with these knuckleheads who buy into the resort. It's absurd. I mean, it's happening. It's been happening every weekend of the Trump presidency, and it's an outrageous scandal.
And in addition to that, they're redacting portions of the Mueller report because these are secrets that we can't see. But it's okay for Donald Trump to go down to Mar-a-Lago and cut deals with other dignitaries, over a lobster,
or you just have people going into the buffet breakfast and they're 3 feet from the president. They're totally unvetted by our security services, and it's just crazy. So obviously I think Republicans would have been more aggressive. I think you also have to keep the politics of it in mind. So one of the reasons I think it may be worthwhile to impeach the president is that the president's already unpopular, right? Like everybody looks at Clinton and it's like, oh, it backfired on Republicans. And it's like, well, yeah, it backfired on Republicans because Clinton had 65% approval at the time. And the public didn't agree that his relationship with Monica Lewinsky was disqualifying in any way. Now, maybe we were wrong about that in retrospect, right? I don't know. I was a teenager. But I can see a case that it should have been taken more seriously. But the reality is that this is a president that's been hovering between 37 and 43% approval for his entire presidency, largely because of his personality, because he's a jerk and people don't like him. And so it's hard for me to see the case that any kind of impeachment proceeding is walking into a trap that he's setting for us, because one, he's too stupid to set traps, and B, the public doesn't like him. Then they're likely to take the information that comes out of an impeachment proceedings and put that into the binder along with all the other things they don't like about this guy. So anyway, it's again, it is a really tough question about what Democrats should do, because they only have so much bandwidth. But they're not getting any laws signed by the president, so they might as well do something.
David Faris is my guest. When we come back, I'm going to ask him what Democrats should do about the Mueller report to turn it to their political advantage. We'll be right back.
The Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you by the Chicago Sun-Times. For the latest in Chicago and Illinois news, sports, weather, and the latest in national news from a real Chicago frame of mind and real Chicago writers, check out the Chicago Sun-Times. Read the daily paper or online at chicago.suntimes.com. And hey, if you have a little extra cash, subscribe. And by the Chicago Reader. For a deeper dive in the daily Chicago news and for all of what's going on in this city, you gotta read the Reader. Music, arts and culture, film, extensive event calendars, concert listings, and more, including weekly political columns from writers like Maya Dukmasova and, yes, our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader is free in newsstands and at chicagoreader.com. That's chicagoreader.com.
Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Mr. Joravsky, take us to the weekend.
I love that music. Not only does David Faris, my guest in the studio, articulate the progressive viewpoint that he thinks Democrats should follow, not only does he teach political science at Roosevelt University, not only did he write a great book, It's Time to Fight Dirty, but he also plays a wicked keyboard. That's David Faris playing on the keyboard.
Do chopsticks.
Anyway, we have that keyboard there, Dave. I have no idea what it's doing. There's just some randomly sitting in the studio. So
if it starts playing itself, then we'll know we're on an episode
yeah,
of Westworld.
Like it's I didn't get to talk to Rummana about Us.
Oh, there's always
that's
next
a great
week.
movie. That is a great movie. Yeah,
there you go, David Fair. You liked it?
I loved Us. Yeah, it was a masterpiece.
It was deep, and I didn't get it. I'm gonna have to see it again.
Yeah, I like movies that are so deep. I have to read about them to figure it out because I'm too literal minded. You know, like I would have failed literary analysis, so I have to get up on like Slate afterwards and be like, "What did it actually mean?"
No, I know.
I was moved and intrigued, but I don't, I don't interpret it myself.
Us is a deep dive movie. You got to watch it 2 or 3 times. It's like The Shining, way before your time, Stanley Kubrick. In fact, he was influenced by The Shining. He stole huge chunks or paid homage to huge chunks of Stanley Kubrick. Anyway, all right, enough Us talk. We were talking about. Oh, I'm sorry, young man. You have an update.
All good. We do have an update. First off, we are having a caption contest. We reached 1,000 likes on the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page.
They blew us up, but we came back.
Hey, we're back at it, all right? And like I said, it's a grassroots campaign on this Facebook page. We're not paying for likes or anything like that. So it's grassroots, people. And to celebrate our 1,000 likes, we're having a caption contest. It's a Mayor Rahm and, well, Mayor-elect Lori Lightfoot caption contest. It looks like Rahm has his hand on Lori as he's walking her into some building. I'm not sure.
I think it's City Hall.
He's
ushering her in to meet with her for their transition meeting at the mayor's office on the 5th floor.
Guys, like 500 captions just came into my head for what we could do with that. So head over to the Facebook page. What we'll do is we'll keep this open until Tuesday's show. And on Tuesday's show, we will announce our winner of the caption contest. So get your captions in, and we'll read them on the air. And like I was telling Ferris when we were on riding the elevator, unlike the radio, we can curse now. So feel free to curse on your captions, all right? We'll read them if they're not too filthy. Talking to you, Monroe Anderson, you dirty sailor. All right. So, and we do have an actual update, okay? Mayor-elect Lori Lightfoot today during Fran the Whoa Man Spielman show. Go check it out on Chicago Sun-Times if you've yet to, the Fran Spielman show. Today on the show, she accused Alderman Ed Burke of the 14th Ward of attempting to organize the city council against her and threatened to expose the alderman who dare conspire with him. Yeah, I guess Lightfoot's learning real fast about this city. Yeah. We have audio here of that. Shout out to Fran Spielman. Excellent work. Go check out the Fran Spielman show if you've yet to yet. Chicago.suntimes.com.
Ed Burke is messing around. What's he up to? Is he trying to organize against you already?
Well, I'm not surprised. Does that surprise you? Of course he is. That's what he does. But it's not like it's a surprise. It's not like I'm unaware of it. And he's going to have bigger fish to fry. I have every confidence that the charges are going to be brought in an indictment against him before the new mayor, before I'm sworn in. So he needs to focus on his own personal circumstances and stop trying to meddle around. We're not going to resurrect the Verdoliak 29 in the form of Ed Burke. That's not going to happen.
But he's trying to do that, isn't
Well,
he?
he can try all he wants. It's not going to happen. He's not going to be successful.
He's matching you?
Well, in any alderman who's going to try to align themselves with Ed Burke at this time, we're going to make sure that that gets very public and exposed, and they're going to have to explain to the public why it is that they're aligning with them against the voters of this city.
I tell you what, Joanna said it. She's not going to be pushed around.
No, let me just say this right now. I just have to say this, and following up on what Lori Lightfoot said. Any alderman, now, wait, let me back up. I've known to criticize aldermen in the city of Chicago from time to time. But any alderman who is so dumb that he or she would hitch his or her political wagon to Ed Burke at this moment in time. Hey, alderman, did you see what happened to Toni Preckwinkle in last Tuesday's election? She got 25% of the vote. He's exceedingly unpopular. If you are dumb enough to hook yourself to Ed Burke, then you deserve to lose. Unbelievable. I have to believe that Lori is using, let me strike that. I'm wondering if Lori is just using that as an attempt to undercut any attempt by any alderman to join, to put together a faction that might counter her by just immediately putting Ed Burke's face on that body. That would be a very Trumpian move, David Faris.
That would be fighting dirty.
It would be fighting dirty. Lori Lightfoot has read the David Faris book. It's time to fight dirty. Just you could have like a legitimate debate in the Chicago City Council where aldermen are, exercising their legislative prerogative to speak up against a powerful mayor. So what does she do? She slaps Ed Burke's. Oh, that'll stop him right there. So, but I do have to say, if Ed Burke is trying to organize a group of aldermen, shame, shame, shame on the aldermen who are dumb enough to join that party. Sorry, I just had to say that.
Amen.
Why would you take the knives out against somebody that just won a 3-1 victory like yesterday? It's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy, and I really have a hard time believing that. I lived through council wars. What Franz Spielman was alluding to, or Lori Lightfoot was alluding to. That was when Harold Washington was elected mayor in 1983. Eddie Verdoliak and Eddie Burke put together an alliance of white aldermen, largely on racist, glue, if you will, that kept them together. I lived through that. So the notion that we would return to that using Ed Burke, who's been so discredited as the unifying force, I mean, I just can't imagine 26 aldermen would join forces behind Ed Burke unless we had our form of impeachment. Well, they just got elected, so that they couldn't be impeached, David Faris. All right, let's go back to the Mueller report. The Mueller report has not been released. The Attorney General, as we speak, is scrubbing it of passages that somehow or other would be detrimental to our national security, whatever that means. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is free to wheel and deal in the Mar-a-Lago banquet room, cutting deals for anybody to hear, being taped by, there was a Chinese woman who came in, a woman from China she had
she had 2 cell phones and,
yeah,
it's not welcome there anymore, I guess.
Yeah, malware. Yeah. So
malware,
anyway,
right, yeah.
So all right. Anyway, but we have to be protected from the truths about our own government. Interesting that my libertarian friends in the Republican Party are abiding by that. They want censorship. Isn't that interesting? They want censorship when it comes to protecting Donald Trump, but they don't want censorship when it comes to Alex Jones' ability to insult Sandy Hook parents. Isn't that interesting?
Weird hypocrisy coming from the contemporary Republican Party. I just wouldn't have expected it.
All right. So what do you think the Democrats should do? Here we are. They're sitting on the Mueller report. What do you think the Democrats should do?
Well, I mean, they have to do everything that they can to get the full unredacted Mueller report into the hands of members of Congress. And I don't think that they should stop fighting that fight until they either succeed or until the election happens. We don't know how much Barr is actually going to redact. And I think that the reaction to what has already happened is a preview of what's to come. Right, over the last couple of days, you've seen people from the Mueller report who put the Mueller report together, leaking like crazy to the Washington Post and to the New York Times about how it's much worse for the president than Barr claims it is, how it details extensive acts of obstruction of justice, how it details overwhelming evidence of prolonged contacts between the Trump campaign and Russian nationals working to subvert our elections. So, again, that'll keep happening, right? Barr can do whatever he wants. My feeling about this has always been that one way or another, the public will see the full unredacted Mueller report.
You think we will see that?
Yeah,
unredacted?
I mean, I could see that whoever leaks it will redact like legitimate passages that would legitimately jeopardize, our intelligence collections efforts, or would jeopardize the proceedings in an ongoing.
You're presuming that there must be a passage in there that would do that. I don't know if I would make that assumption. But look, you're fighting fair. Right. David Faris, you're fighting fair.
Right. I mean, all I'm saying is like we don't want to leak something that's going to put somebody's life in danger. I have no idea whether that's
like a phone number. If there's a phone number in there, you don't want the phone. You redact
exactly.
the phone number.
I mean, I can't imagine this thing is now rumored to be 700 pages long. So I can't imagine that's, more than a few paragraphs in the whole report. So Democrats cannot settle for a heavily redacted report that is delivered to them by Bob Barr. They cannot settle for a report where the attorney general claims executive privilege for the president and redacts things that are not national security issues, but that just look bad for the president. Like they have to fight for that report until they get it. And if they keep getting stonewalled by the administration, I think that they need to send out signals to the folks that worked on the Mueller report and people who have a copy of it that they ought to, we got a Pentagon Papers, this stuff. Like it just needs to be delivered to the New York Times or to the Washington Post, and it needs to just get out there. Because once it's leaked, it's leaked. This is the digital age. You're not going to be able to get that thing out of the internet.
I'm surprised, by the way, that hasn't happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, one of the things that goes unreported, I think, is that Mueller and Bob Barr are friends. I mean, they go back like 30 years. And so I think that there may be a sense in the Mueller camp that like, wow, I can't believe my friend Bob Barr is doing this to me. Surely in the next couple of weeks he's going to make this right. And I'm not going to go nuclear until it is proven conclusively that he's trying to cover this up. But the damage that's already been done is extensive. What these guys got to do is they got a week of free media, trumpeting the president's innocence and his quote unquote total exoneration. And I was shocked that we didn't hear more from the Mueller camp pushing back against that narrative. Because that was every headline in every paper in America for several days. In the same way that when Comey sent the letter to Congress right before the election about how they had reopened Hillary's email investigation, that was what people remembered. Rather than 3 days later, Comey was like, "Oh well, we looked and it was
you're right.
It was just a double email or whatever. Sorry."
Was that your Comey imitation?
No, I hate him too much to imitate him. Like I can't do it. And he tweeted on April Fool's Day that he was running for president, and I'm very gullible, so I had an internal meltdown for about 5 minutes. I was like, if I have to look at this guy for more than 3 seconds at a time,
it's something you have in common with Donald Trump.
Right.
It's not a lot of love for Comey.
I do not like James Comey.
All right, there's a political there's a political decision and sort of a good government decision, and I'm always on the side of good government, as naive as that sounds. I'd like to see it because I want to know what went down. I always want to know more about what's going on. I just not only here in City Hall, but at the national level. And I don't buy the fact that it's a violation of state security at all. But then there's the political decision, and the political decision. I hear this from so many friends of the far left. I'm talking like the far left, where they go so far left that they almost join the Republicans.
Like the Glenn Greenwald.
Yes, the Green. Yeah, I don't even know if he's left anymore, but whatever. Yeah, whatever he is. That left is saying too much preoccupation with Putin, too much preoccupation with Russia. And there's nothing there, et cetera, et cetera. Democrats shouldn't hitch their wagon to this point. So there's the political, strategy. What do you think politically? You put on your strategist hat. Politically, what's the best road for the Democrats to travel here?
I think that the best road to travel, once we have the Mueller report, is to connect the details of what the president has done to a large sort of unfolding narrative about the public and open corruption, insider dealing, of a lot of stuff that should be illegal that is legal, in terms of lobbying efforts or buying condos in Trump's buildings, and it's obviously just money laundering. I think that the story that the president is a corrupt rich guy is the political winner here. And it plays directly into the narrative that the Democrats need to advance next year, which is that, the meritocracy is dead. Like the procedures that we think guarantee fair play in America do not exist. And the president is the greatest example of how there is not a level playing field in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
You could connect it to the college admission scandal. You could connect it to the housing crisis. You could connect it to problems in the criminal justice system. And so to me, it's not that we need to go around for the next 2 years talking about whether or not the president is a Russian asset. I always thought that was sort of far-fetched. And talk about how the president is compromised.
Yeah.
Talk about how the president cares more about his business dealings with Russia and with other countries in the Russian orbit than he does about the American national interest. So you use the Mueller report, you take pieces of it, and you build a case that the president is not on the side of working people, that the president is out for himself, he's out for his friends, he's out to get richer, which is what he's using the presidency for,
Mm-hmm.
right? There is a Trump hotel down the street from the White House that other foreign dignitaries are coming in, pouring money into,
Mm-hmm.
that's making the president richer. And that to me is just absurd. You have multiple criminals in the cabinet of the president of the United States. You have Alex Azar, who's covered up Jeffrey Epstein's sex crimes, right? I mean, there's so much to glom onto here about how the president is just not on the level. I'd like to see them use that phrase. The president of the United States is not on the level. And the Mueller report proves that he is not on the level. Okay, so we don't need to get into a debate about, whether the president committed a crime. I think that the report will detail crimes committed by the president of the United States.
All right, now before I let you get out the door, this is going to be a recurring question. Whenever you're here, as we head down to 2020, at least until we head down to the Democratic convention, which one of the candidates running on the Democratic side, I think there's 16 of it, is it D? I forget the exact number. And I could not pass a test and name them all, so don't even ask me. But which of the 16 at this moment excite you the most, that give you a sense of hope?
Oh man, that's a tough question, because I made a decision when it started that I wasn't going to make a choice until I had heard a bunch of debates at least,
Mm-hmm.
so that I could sort of sort through my feelings about all these candidates. The person that I most want to be president is Elizabeth Warren. I think that Elizabeth Warren has the best policy ideas out of anybody in the field. She has a lot of really creative and really interesting ideas about how to get around some of the most problematic aspects of corruption in our system, and the way that it enriches people and the way that it leads to greater inequality. I personally find some of those ideas more appealing than the sort of 1950s era the social democratic platform of Bernie Sanders, a lot of which I like, but I don't think it's as innovative as Warren's is. The problem is that, for reasons that probably have a lot to do with sexism and misogyny, she's just not getting the kind of audience that some of these other candidates are getting. And I like the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, Pete Buttigieg. He seems like a nice guy. But the fact that he's outpolling Elizabeth Warren just says something about all of this. And so again, the person whose policies I like the most is Elizabeth Warren. That said, our primary is in March of next year.
Yeah.
And if I see a candidate that's polling 7, 8, 9 points better than the rest of the field, I'm going to take a long look at that person, even if I think I have other problems with them. If that's Bernie Sanders, then I may vote for Bernie Sanders.
Yeah. In other words, you're going to be a strategic, pragmatic Democratic voter.
Exactly. You can't just look at the polls, but I think you have to take a holistic picture of, we have to win this election.
Right.
I really would prefer it not be Joe Biden, but
I think you're going to get your wish. I just have a funny feeling. Anyway,
me too.
David Faris is my guest, professor of political science at Roosevelt. It's Time to Fight Dirty. That's the name of his books, folks. You can track it down at a bookstore or on the internet, or just go out to the Chicago Public Library and check it out. David, it's always a blast talking politics with you. Get you back in a month and see what the world looks like. All right.
I would love to be here again. It's always a good time.
All right. Very
By the
good.
way, there's 17 candidates.
17?
Frank yesterday told us about this Tim Ryan guy.
Oh, yeah. Tim Ryan. Yeah.
The guy that failed to take down Nancy Pelosi.
Yes, that guy.
That guy.
Come on, Tim. You're not winning me over. I love Nancy Pelosi. All right.
Maybe win a leadership election first before a presidency.
Before a presidency. David Faris is my guest. Joanna Klonsky before him. She did a great job. And Rummana Hussain, always fantastic. The Rummana Rundown every Friday. And, of course, the man, the myth, the legend behind the board, the pride and joy of Alton, Illinois. The ladies all love him for his body and his mind. Give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash.
I'll take it.
Have a great weekend, everybody. See you Tuesday.
And remember, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows at chicagoreader.com, chicago.suntimes.com, and wherever you download your favorite podcasts. If you've already downloaded this, hey, guess what? We do the show live, 1 until 3 p.m., Tuesdays through Fridays. We say 3 p.m., but usually we keep it a little longer, like we just did with David Faris there. Also, remember, we're having a caption contest. Head over to the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page. Leave us your caption. We'll announce our winner on Tuesday.